Tonight, we will not gaze at the sky above, but at the one within. A silent cosmos folded behind your eyes, billions of neurons flickering like distant suns, each thought a spark across the dark, each memory a constellation drawn by time. Listen to the faint hum beneath your breathing. That is your brain, whispering galaxies of light. As your body grows still, let those inner stars drift, their rhythms slower, softer, until consciousness becomes a horizon fading into night. Welcome to the universe inside your mind. Beneath the fragile dome of your skull lies a landscape vast beyond imagining. The cerebral cortex, the outermost sheet of the brain, thin as paper, yet wide enough when unfolded to cover the surface of a dinner table. It weighs little, barely a few millimeters thick, but within it resides almost everything that makes you you. If you could stretch it flat, it would sprawl across 2,000 square centimeters, a shimmering terrain of grooves and ridges, valleys of thought, hills of memory, rivers of imagination. 80% of your brain's mass belongs to this single layer. Within its folds live billions of neurons, each one a flicker of electrical life, each one reaching out with branching arms to touch others, forming a network that hums like a star field. When scientists peer into this cortex with their instruments, it looks eerily like the night sky. Galaxies of light connected by invisible bridges, constellations that change shape as you learn, dream, or remember. This is where consciousness blooms, not in one place, but across the vast geography of the cortex. The front regions weigh possibilities, imagine futures, and choose. The back regions paint colour and shape from the chaos of light entering your eyes. The sides cradle your words and stories, your sense of sound and touch, every laugh, every whisper, every remembered face. They are all storms of electricity sweeping through this universe inside. When you speak, the cortex fires in patterns so intricate that even the fastest computers struggle to mimic them. When you dream, it hums with signals reshaping memories into new forms, like stars rearranging into constellations no one has ever seen. When you close your eyes, activity does not stop. It transforms. The brain begins to play its private cinema, weaving internal images from fragments of what you have seen and felt. Within this sheet of grey lies 4 great continents: the frontal, parietal, temporal and occipital lobes. The frontal lobe behind your forehead is the architect, the place of planning, language and restraint. It lets you resist an impulse, imagine tomorrow, or apologize for a mistake. The parietal lobe, on the crown of your head, is the navigator, the region that feels the world, that lets you reach for a cup in the dark or trace the shape of a familiar face. The temporal lobe near your ears is the keeper of sound and memory. It hums with voices, melodies, and fragments of time. And at the back, the occipital lobe opens a window to vision, transforming light into the miracle of seeing. Together, they form the cartography of consciousness, a living map that redraws itself with every heartbeat. Inside this map, messages race at extraordinary speeds, up to 120 meters per second, leaping from one neuron to another through a web of more than 100 trillion synapses. These connections are not fixed. They pulse, fade, strengthen, and vanish depending on what you do. When you learn something new, your brain literally rewires itself. When you forget, certain paths grow dim, as if the lights along a forgotten road have gone out. Neuroscientists call this plasticity, the brain's ability to change its own architecture. It is why a pianist's fingers move faster with practice, why a child learning a language absorbs sound effortlessly, why after loss, some parts of the brain reorganize to heal. The cortex is not stone, it is clay. It reshapes itself according to your life. Within its storms of electricity, memories form as microscopic patterns, intricate dance steps of charged particles. Each memory, whether of a scent, a melody, or a heartbreak, is not stored in a single spot but scattered like starlight across the cortex. When you recall it, neurons across different regions light up together, reconstructing the moment as though replaying an echo. And somewhere between those echoes lives imagination, the ability to combine fragments into something that never existed before. A musician hearing a melody that no instrument has yet played, a painter envisioning a world of impossible colours, a dreamer inventing futures that may one day come true. These are the brain's constellations being redrawn in real time. At night, when you lie still, your cortex does not rest. It reorganizes. It revisits the day's experiences, deciding what to keep, what to fade, what to weave into long-term memory. It talks in secret to the hippocampus, that deep structure of memory, and together they file the events of your waking life into archives. Sleep is not the absence of activity. It is the silent librarian of the mind at work. Imagine now, if you could listen closely enough, the faint electric whisper of your cortex, a forest of neurons firing in harmony, an ocean of signals rolling beneath your skull. Each moment of awareness is just the brief alignment of millions of cells agreeing, for an instant, on what reality feels like. Then the wave moves on and another thought rises and another. The cerebral cortex is the canvas on which every emotion, dream and decision is painted. It is both fragile and infinite, a few millimeters of living tissue holding centuries of art, science, love and longing. In its folds are hidden the laughter of your childhood, the first word you ever spoke, the taste of a summer fruit, the scent of rain on the road home. If you could see your mind from afar, perhaps it would look like a spiral galaxy, glowing arms of neurons spinning in calm silence, a personal cosmos, vast and uncharted. As you drift deeper into this documentary of your own being, picture it now. A galaxy made not of stars but of thoughts. Each spark, each glimmer is you, expanding, dissolving, reforming. A universe, observing itself, dreaming itself. Endlessly awake and endlessly asleep. Let that image settle gently behind your eyelids. Breathe. The cosmos inside you continues its quiet orbit, and the night, both within and without, begins to glow. The flame of emotion. Deep within the folds of your brain, far below the glowing planes of the cortex, lies something small, barely the size of an almond. Yet from this tiny shape comes the trembling of fear, the rush of anger, the swell of joy, and the warmth of love. It is called the amygdala, from the Greek word for almond. A modest form, hidden and ancient, it burns at the very center of your emotional life. If the cortex is the sky of thought, the amygdala is its fireplace. It is where the sparks fall before reason can catch them. When you sense danger, a shadow at the window, a sudden noise in the dark, it is the amygdala that flares first. Before your mind has time to explain, your body already knows. Your pulse quickens, your breathing sharpens, blood floods your muscles, preparing you to fight or flee. The amygdala is not a thinker. It is a guardian, old and primal, carved by evolution to keep you alive. Long before humans could speak or write or dream, the amygdala watched for threats. It remembers the hiss of a snake, the crack of thunder, the scent of smoke, signals of danger passed down through time, and even today, in a world of quiet rooms and digital light, it still burns as fiercely as it did when we lived among predators. Scientists call it the fear center, but that is only part of its truth. It does not only ignite fear, it ignites everything that moves us. It lights up when you fall in love, when music swells through your chest, when you see the face of someone you've missed. The amygdala does not know good or bad, only intensity. Its language is the trembling of the body, heartbeat, breath, muscle, skin. When it glows too brightly, the world feels dangerous. The anxious mind lives under its spell. The amygdala sees threat where none exists. In disorders like post-traumatic stress, it refuses to dim, replaying old terror again and again, but it can also learn. Through therapy, meditation, or safety repeated over time, the amygdala can unlearn fear. It begins to quiet, to release its grip, to recognize that the storm has passed. And when it is damaged, when trauma, injury, or disease silences its circuits, something remarkable happens. Fear vanishes. People with such injuries can walk towards snakes, touch fire, or face violence with eerie calm. Without fear, life loses its edges. The amygdala reminds us that a certain amount of fear is necessary, not as punishment, but as guidance. It is also the heart of empathy. When you see another person cry or wince in pain or laugh uncontrollably, the amygdala responds. It mirrors the emotional pulse of others, translating expression into sensation. It tells you, this matters. Without it, the world becomes mechanical. Actions without feeling, faces without meaning. The amygdala is twofold, one in each hemisphere, and together they speak constantly with the cortex above, that logical voice that tries to explain what the flame has already decided. When you pause before shouting, when you take a breath before replying in anger, you are watching the dialogue between fire and sky, emotion and reason negotiating the meaning of the moment. In the laboratory, scientists have watched how this dance unfolds. The amygdala flashes first, within milliseconds, sending signals through the nervous system that raise heart rate, constrict blood vessels, and flood the bloodstream with adrenaline. Then, milliseconds later, the cortex awakens, analyzes the scene, and either fuels the flame or calms it. It is a system of balance, a conversation that never stops. This balance defines our humanity. Too little amygdala, and we drift through life untouched, indifferent, unmoved. Too much, and we drown in anxiety and rage. Every meditation, every lullaby, every deep exhale you take is a quiet act of tending this inner fire, giving it just enough air to warm you, but not enough to burn you. Think of it for a moment as an ember inside a lantern. The glass around it is the cortex, reflective, rational, beautifully designed. But the light inside, the flickering orange at the core, is the amygdala. It casts the glow that makes every thought visible. Without it, the lantern would shine cold. It even reacts to art. When you hear a song that makes you cry, when a film stirs nostalgia or awe, the amygdala brightens. It cannot distinguish between real and imagined emotion. Only the depth of feeling matters. This is why stories touch us, why even a whisper in the dark can move us to tears. The amygdala lives for resonance. In moments of stillness, you can feel it, that quiet warmth spreading from your chest to your breath. The amygdala listens to the heart, to the rhythm of your lungs, and answers in kind. It is both signal and response, both fire and echo. Some scientists call it the heart within the brain, others call it the emotional compass. Poets might simply call it the soul's candle. Whatever the name, it burns continuously, flickering brighter in love, dimming in sorrow, glowing steady in peace. When you meditate, when you forgive, when you release anger, this candle steadies. Its flame no longer leaps wildly. It becomes clear, transparent, almost invisible, yet still warm. This is not the extinction of emotion, but its transformation into calm light. In the end, the amygdala teaches a paradox. To feel deeply is to live fully, but to master feeling is to remain free. It is both the fire that startles and the warmth that soothes. The challenge of the human mind is not to extinguish this flame, but to understand its rhythm, to let it burn without consuming, to let it glow without blinding. So tonight, as you lie beneath the quiet hum of your thoughts, imagine it, a small ember glowing deep in your skull surrounded by silence. The amygdala, the flame of emotion. It flickers gently as you breathe. It listens to your heartbeat. It remembers every fear you faced and every love that made you tremble. And as you drift towards sleep, that flame softens, glowing low, turning from warning to comfort, from alarm to lullaby. The fire does not go out, it simply becomes warm enough to dream by. The library of memory. Inside your brain lies a pair of small curling shapes, soft spirals, each no longer than a finger joint. They rest deep within the temporal lobes, quiet but tireless. Their name comes from the Greek for seahorse, because when seen in cross-section, they curve just like one. This is the hippocampus, the library of your memories, a living archive that never sleeps. If the amygdala is the flame of emotion, the hippocampus is the keeper of stories that fire illuminates. It does not feel, it remembers. Every name, every face, every street corner from your childhood is shelved somewhere within its labyrinthine folds. It decides what to preserve and what to let fade. The moments that touched you deeply are written in ink. The ordinary ones drift away like smoke. When you wake in the morning and know who you are, when you remember the sound of someone's voice or the path you took home, you're reading from this inner library. The hippocampus organizes your experience into narrative, time, place, cause, and effect, so that the flow of life makes sense. Without it, everything would be a series of disconnected flashes. There are stories of patients who have lost their hippocampus to injury or disease. They can remember their past, the world before the damage. But from the moment of loss, time stands still. They can hold a conversation, smile, even play music. But once you leave the room and return, they look at you as if meeting for the first time. They are adrift in the present, unable to record the passage of hours. It is as if their lives have become a series of still photographs, never developing into a film. This fragile organ is not alone. Each hippocampus speaks constantly to the cerebral cortex, that vast sky of thought, sending back and forth signals that shape how memories are stored. During the day, it receives, encoding sights, words, emotions. During sleep, it sends, replaying patterns to the cortex so that experiences can settle into long-term memory. When you dream, the hippocampus is busy cataloguing. The night is not rest for it, but renewal. In this way, sleep becomes sacred. It is the time when your brain decides which parts of the day to keep and which to discard. The hippocampus whispers, "This moment mattered. This one, you can let go." And so the brain's filing system continues night after night, shaping who you are. Every sensory detail, the scent of rain, the colour of an old sweater, the tremor in a voice, passes through the hippocampus before it becomes part of you. It does not store memories in isolation. It connects them to others. This smell with that person, this sound with that feeling. That is why memory is not a perfect record, but a living tapestry, threads woven and rewoven by emotion, time, and meaning. Under stress, however, the hippocampus begins to suffer. Cortisol, the hormone of fear and tension, can shrink its delicate structure. Chronic anxiety, sleeplessness, or trauma wears it down, like a library slowly eaten by dust and damp. Yet it is resilient. When calm returns, when safety is restored, it can regrow connections, reopen shelves, and rewrite what was lost. In musicians and linguists, scientists have found a curious thing. The hippocampus is larger. Repetition, melody, and rhythm appear to strengthen its structure. Learning, it seems, is a form of physical exercise for this seahorse-shaped librarian. Each time you practice, remember, or recite, it lays down another fibre, binding you tighter to your skills, your songs, your words. And when emotion joins memory, when the amygdala sends its burning signal, the hippocampus listens closely. That is why strong emotion makes memory indelible. You can forget 1,000 calm mornings, but never the night your heart was broken, or the day you saw something beautiful enough to stop your breath. Emotion etches deeper grooves in the hippocampus, ensuring those moments endure. Think of it as a maze of shelves reaching endlessly inward. Every event you have ever experienced is a book upon those shelves, some written in gold, some fading into grey. The hippocampus is both librarian and caretaker. It rearranges, cross-references, restores order to chaos. It is why, years later, the scent of a single flower can pull you back to childhood, or a few notes of music can return you to a summer that no longer exists. When you learn something new, a word, a face, a skill, tiny electrical storms ripple through the hippocampus. Neurons fire, chemicals shift, and the memory begins as a fragile trace. Over hours it strengthens, wrapping itself in layers of myelin, linking to other memories. The first few hours are critical. That is why cramming before sleep works better than cramming at dawn. Because the hippocampus is waiting to archive. It is not just a storage space, it is an imagination engine. When you recall an event, the hippocampus reassembles it from fragments scattered across the brain. Sound here, colour there, emotion elsewhere. It does not simply replay, it recreates. Every recollection is slightly different from the last, each retelling coloured by who you have become since the original moment. In that way, memory is a living act, not a frozen photograph. Even dreams borrow from it. When the hippocampus speaks during REM sleep, it sends fragments of memories drifting into surreal combinations. A familiar street under alien skies, the face of a friend merged with a stranger's voice. It is the librarian's after-hours experiment, reshuffling the archives to make sense of what can't be reasoned by day. If it were possible to see your hippocampus glowing in real time, you would see it flicker when you read, pulse when you hear your name, shine when you recall something precious. It is the quiet centre of your continuity, the reason you are not just a series of disconnected moments. Without it, life becomes perpetual present. Beautiful, perhaps, but terrifying in its emptiness. With it, you have a past, a future, and a thread that connects them. You have identity. So as you rest tonight, imagine yourself standing inside a vast library lit by warm light. Shelves rise around you, filled with the stories of your life. You can walk among them, trace your fingers along their spines, feel the dust of time. Somewhere in that library, a small seahorse-shaped guardian moves silently, placing a new memory on a shelf, opening another, tidying a row of thoughts. That is your hippocampus, the archivist of your being. It hums softly as you drift towards sleep, cataloguing this very moment, your breath, the rhythm of your heart, the sound of this story. Tomorrow, when you remember it faintly, you will be reading from the page it wrote tonight, the gatekeeper of reason. At the front of the brain, just behind your forehead, lies a region that glows faintly when you make a decision, hold a promise, or resist an impulse. It is the prefrontal cortex, the gatekeeper of reason, the conductor of thought, and the architect of civilization. Without it, we would still act on instinct, shouting, striking, fleeing. With it, we pause, we plan, we imagine. It is the newest part of the human brain, evolution's latest experiment. Other animals have smaller versions, but ours is vast, curling forward like the prow of a ship. It matures slowly, not fully formed until around the age of 25, which is why adolescence feels like a storm without a captain. The emotional engines of the amygdala fire first, but the prefrontal cortex is still learning how to steer. Inside it, billions of neurons form networks that calculate, predict, and restrain. When you hesitate before sending a message you might regret, when you decide to forgive instead of retaliate, that's the prefrontal cortex at work, whispering reason over reaction. It does not silence emotion, it negotiates with it. Like a wise guardian standing between the heart and the world, it translates impulse into action, but only after considering consequence. Every moral choice you have ever made has passed through this silent chamber. Here, the brain imagines not just what is, but what should be. The ability to think beyond the moment, to visualize futures, to feel responsibility is its gift. This is where empathy becomes law, where compassion takes shape as restraint. It is the difference between seeing a flame and lighting a candle, between fear and understanding. Neuroscientists have watched what happens when this region is damaged. Patients may retain intelligence and memory, but they lose something subtler, the sense of propriety, of inhibition. They speak without filter, act without pause, and drift without purpose. Logic alone cannot make a human being. It is reason plus restraint, morality woven into choice. The prefrontal cortex is the quiet voice saying, wait. When you are tired, that voice weakens. Sleep deprivation shuts down this region first. That is why exhaustion makes you impulsive, why arguments happen late at night, why discipline collapses after long stress. The brain's gatekeeper simply cannot hold the flood, but rest, deep, consistent rest, restores it. The prefrontal cortex wakes again, its circuits humming in harmony, your patience returning like the tide. It is also the home of creativity. While the back of the brain processes what is seen, the prefrontal cortex imagines what could be. It combines fragments from memory and emotion, recombining them into invention. When an artist envisions an image that doesn't yet exist, or a scientist dreams of an experiment never tried, the prefrontal cortex glows like dawn. Creativity is not chaos, it is disciplined imagination, and it listens to the amygdala. When emotion surges, this region receives the flame and decides whether to fan or soothe it. That is why meditation and mindfulness strengthen its fibers. They literally build more stable communication between emotion and control. In scans of long-term meditators, the prefrontal cortex shows greater thickness, better regulation, calmer activity. In silence, it learns. It is also sensitive to stress. Chronic anxiety, noise, and fear can shrink its grey matter, blurring decision-making and empathy. Modern life taxes it constantly. Too many notifications, too many choices. Each demand pulls its focus like small cuts on the same thread. But when you slow down, when you breathe deeply, When you practice focus, even for a few minutes, the thread mends. This front region houses our sense of time. It measures the gap between cause and effect, helping us wait for a reward, plan a journey, finish a project. When it falters, patience vanishes. The world collapses into the present tense. Yet when it strengthens, the mind expands forward into hope, strategy, meaning. Every act of endurance is a prefrontal triumph. Morality too lives here. When you imagine the suffering of another person, when you feel guilt for harm you didn't intend, this region lights up. It integrates empathy with logic, weaving emotion into ethics. In that moment, your brain becomes a small parliament, voices of passion and restraint debating quietly behind your brow. To function well, this region requires balance. Too much control, and life becomes sterile calculation. Too little, and we return to chaos. The prefrontal cortex must breathe, alternating discipline and surrender. It guides, but it also listens. The great thinkers of every age, philosophers, artists, monks, have sought this rhythm, clarity without rigidity, compassion without weakness. Imagine it now, a candle burning steadily in the darkness of your skull. Around it, the amygdala flickers with flame, the hippocampus hums with memories, the cortex swirls with thoughts. But the candle, cool, unwavering, represents the prefrontal cortex. It does not shout, it simply illuminates. When you meditate, that light grows clearer. When you forgive, it glows warmer. When you plan not from fear but from purpose, it becomes steady, a guiding star behind your eyes. This is the part of you that holds the self together, that reminds you not only of what you want, but why. In ancient times, philosophers believed reason lived in the heart, emotion in the liver, courage in the lungs. But modern science reveals that all of these virtues, patience, compassion, understanding, are electrical patterns right here at the front of your brain. It is the throne of the rational soul. When you close your eyes tonight, feel the calm weight of that region resting behind your forehead. Notice how your breath slows. Your pulse steadies. That is the prefrontal cortex dimming the lights, turning down the noise, whispering that it's safe to rest. In dreams, it will fade to silence, handing control to older, deeper regions. And yet, even in sleep it lingers at the edge of awareness, the watchman at the gate, ensuring that reason will return with the morning light. So, let it rest now. Let the gatekeeper set down its torch. The choices of the day are already made. The mind ship drifts in calm water, and as you begin to drift too, imagine that candles glow sinking gently into darkness. The light of reason not extinguished, only at peace. The crossroads of the senses. If the brain were a cathedral, the thalamus would be its grand rotunda, a circular hall through which all visitors must pass before reaching the inner sanctum. Hidden deep in the centre of your head, this small paired structure acts as the crossroads of sensation, where nearly every piece of information the body collects is filtered, sorted, and sent onward. Each sight, sound, touch, and taste, everything except smell, stops here first. The thalamus listens, prioritizes, and decides what reaches consciousness. Without it, the brain would drown in noise. Light from a candle, pressure from your pillow, the faint ticking of a clock, all would assault your awareness at once. But the thalamus is selective. It is the doorkeeper who chooses which impressions to let through, and which to leave waiting at the threshold. Picture it as a pair of elegant eggs nestled at the centre of your mind, one in each hemisphere, connected by a thin bridge. Every second, billions of impulses pass through these ovals, electrical messengers from eyes, ears, skin and tongue, each waiting for a moment of recognition. It is the thalamus that transforms raw sensation into something meaningful, turning data into experience. When your eyes detect light, the signal does not go straight to the visual cortex. It first stops here, where the thalamus refines it, softens it, adjusts the brightness. The same happens with sound. It balances volume, filters echoes, smooths out the sharpness. Even touch, heat, texture, pain, arrives at this hub before being distributed to the proper cortical regions. The thalamus is the editor of your reality, trimming the overwhelming raw footage into a coherent film. When you are awake, The thalamus hums like an open gate, allowing sensory currents to flow into awareness. But when you fall asleep, something remarkable happens. The gate closes. Electrical rhythms change. Communication between senses and cortex is dampened. That is why you can dream without reacting to the real world. The thalamus shuts the door, turning the mind inward. Only when morning comes, when sunlight touches your eyelids, does it reopen, letting the world rush back in. This on-off rhythm is not random. The thalamus is synchronized with the brain's circadian clock and its neighboring structures. During sleep, it sends slow, rhythmic waves that help the cortex rest. During wakefulness, it switches to faster patterns, broadcasting clarity. It is both conductor and bridge, the keeper of transitions between day and night, consciousness and dream. If the thalamus is injured, the results are profound. Because it mediates awareness itself, damage can lead to confusion, loss of sensation, or even coma. To fall into unconsciousness is, in part, to have the thalamic gate stuck half closed. To awaken is for it to swing open once more, flooding the cortex with light. That thin boundary between being and not being, between knowing and not knowing, runs right through its center. Even emotion passes its halls. Signals from the amygdala, carrying the heat of fear or love, flow through the thalamus on their way to the cortex. That is why feelings can heighten senses, why music sounds richer when you're in love, or time seems to slow when you're afraid. The thalamus blends sensation and emotion, body and mind into one seamless world. It is not a passive relay station. It has opinions. It decides what matters. When you focus on a sound, a voice in a crowd, the roll of thunder, you are commanding your thalamus to raise that signal above the rest. Attention is not just mental effort, it is physical gating. The thalamus tightens the channel, allowing one melody through while muting the rest of the orchestra. In meditation, when attention narrows to breath or silence, this region grows calmer, its gates refined. Brain scans of long-term meditators show a quieter thalamus, filtering less noise, creating an experience of deep stillness. The outer world fades, the inner one expands. The doorkeeper stands still, listening to the hush behind all sound. The thalamus is also a mirror of symmetry. One half processes the right side of the world, the other the left, each whispering to its counterpart across a narrow corridor. This symmetry is why closing one eye or one ear does not collapse perception. The other side can compensate, balancing the panorama of awareness. Its shape, two halves joined like wings, has fascinated anatomists for centuries. In ancient drawings, the thalamus was often called the inner chamber, or the bridal bed of the soul, because all sensations before joining the mind must pass through it. Even the philosopher Descartes, who searched for the seat of consciousness, imagined that somewhere near here must lie the interface between matter and spirit. When you close your eyes now, you can almost feel it, that pulse of electricity between outer and inner worlds. Your ears catch a faint sound. Your skin feels the temperature of the air. Your lungs note the rhythm of breath. Each of these messages flows inward to the same crossroads. The thalamus listens and decides whether to bother you with them or to let them dissolve into background. Think of it as a lighthouse in the fog, not a source of light itself, but a point through which every beam must pass. It keeps your inner sea navigable, your senses aligned, your mind afloat on order rather than chaos. Sometimes when people enter deep meditation or anesthesia, activity in the thalamus drops to a whisper. The world fades, yet the mind remains. In that silence, perception no longer needs to travel through the gates. It becomes pure awareness, unfiltered and timeless. Then slowly the gate opens again and the self returns. So tonight, as you listen, imagine standing in the center of this crossroads, a vast circular hall lit by pulses of light. From every direction, signals arrive like messengers, the rustle of your blanket, the rhythm of your breath, the faint beating of your heart. Each one steps forward, offering its message to the thalamus, and one by one, it nods or waves them away, maintaining your fragile peace. Outside this hall, the brain hums with movement, but here, in the middle, there is only balance. Perfect, rhythmic, serene. The gatekeeper at the crossroads lowers the lamps, closes the doors, and the outer world drifts away. Let the thalamus rest. Let the senses dim. You do not need to see or hear or touch anything now. The gate is closed for the night, and behind it, the mind begins to dream, the silent conductor of motion. At the base of your skull, tucked beneath the grand domes of the cerebral hemispheres, rests a smaller brain, the cerebellum, Latin for little brain. You can feel its presence if you place a hand at the back of your neck, just above the spine. Though it makes up barely 10% of the brain's weight, it contains more than half of all its neurons. It is dense, intricate, and astonishingly quiet, the silent conductor of motion. If the cortex composes the symphony of thought, the cerebellum performs the music of movement. Every breath, every step, every delicate gesture of your fingers is guided by its invisible rhythm. It receives signals from the muscles, joints, and balance organs in your ears, compares them to your intentions, and adjusts. You're never aware of this constant dialogue. The corrections happen faster than consciousness can follow. Think of walking across an uneven path. You don't have to calculate every muscle's angle or every shift in weight. The cerebellum does it for you, predicting what will happen a fraction of a second before it does. It balances, coordinates, perfects. If the brain were an orchestra, this would be the conductor waving a baton with no sound, keeping every instrument in time. When you reach for a glass, when you type, dance, or play an instrument, the cerebellum ensures precision. It smooths motion into grace, timing into harmony. Without it, every action would be a tremor, every movement a guess. People with cerebellar injury move like marionettes with tangled strings, gestures jerky and uncertain, as if the music of the body had gone out of tune. The cerebellum is not only about muscles. Recent discoveries show that it also shapes emotion, language, and thought. It monitors internal rhythm, not just of limbs, but of speech, syntax, tone, and even empathy. The same circuits that coordinate motion also appear to coordinate mood. That is why when you are calm and balanced physically, your mind often feels steady too. Movement and thought are different melodies played by the same musician. Within its layered folds, resembling the ripples of a seashell, millions of neurons fire in geometric precision. They receive input from nearly every sensory system, process it, and send back signals to the motor cortex and spinal cord. The cerebellum operates on prediction. It is constantly asking, what will happen next? If you throw a ball, it calculates the arc before your eyes can track it. If you trip, it corrects your posture before you hit the ground. It is your body's timekeeper, its mathematician, its guardian of fluid motion. It is also the first to be silenced by alcohol. A few drinks, and its delicate calculations falter. The stagger, the slur, the delayed reflexes, all are signs that the conductor has dropped the baton. But even then, the cerebellum tries to compensate, adjusting to your altered state, attempting to keep rhythm in a disordered song. Over time, with practice, this little brain rewrites itself. When you learn a skill, riding a bicycle, playing piano, swimming, the cerebellum takes over. What begins as conscious effort becomes automatic grace. You no longer think turn left, balance, push the pedal. You simply glide. Skill is memory carved into movement, and the cerebellum, unlike the conscious mind, never forgets. Its neurons communicate with lightning speed. Where the cortex thinks in patterns of hundreds of milliseconds, the cerebellum works in microseconds, faster than thought, faster even than awareness. It is what allows you to catch a falling object without reasoning, or to blink before a speck of dust reaches your eye. It is intuition made flesh. When scientists began studying meditation, they noticed something surprising. The cerebellum becomes unusually active in deep stillness. Even when the body is motionless, this region hums with subtle coordination, synchronizing breath, heartbeat, and internal balance. It is as though it conducts not just muscles, but the entire orchestra of the self. Its architecture is breathtaking. Viewed under a microscope, the cerebellum looks like a network of shining threads, arranged in perfect symmetry. Millions of parallel fibers intersecting Purkinje cells, the largest neurons in the brain. Each Purkinje cell spreads branches like a coral fan, capturing signals from hundreds of thousands of sources. Together they weave a pattern so complex it has been compared to the circuitry of a supercomputer, though it evolved millions of years before any machine. The cerebellum also speaks to emotion. Experiments show that damage here can dull joy or exaggerate sadness. Its influence on rhythm extends into feeling. Laughter, tears, empathy all require timing after all. The ability to anticipate another person's tone or expression depends partly on these hidden circuits. Emotion, too, has choreography. Think of a musician in a quiet concert hall raising the bow before the note begins. The audience holds its breath, sensing motion before sound. That moment of poised stillness, that perfect balance between expectation and release, is the cerebellum's art. When you train your body through yoga, martial arts, dance, you're sculpting this part of the brain. Each repetition carves precision. Each mistake reshapes its wiring. This is neuroplasticity in motion. The more you practice, the less you think. The cerebellum has learned the song, freeing the cortex to dream while the body performs. Even now, as you sit or lie still, it keeps you upright. Tiny muscles adjust to gravity. The eyes flicker to stabilize vision. The breath adjusts to the heart's rhythm. You do none of this consciously. The cerebellum works in the background. Faithful as pulse, ancient as breath. Its nickname among neuroscientists is the little brain behind the brain. But perhaps it deserves a grander title, the rhythm of being. It transforms chaos into flow, effort into elegance. It is proof that grace is not magic but mathematics, written in the language of neurons. So as night deepens, imagine this conductor lowering its arms. The orchestra of your body slows, heart, lungs, limbs, all following its quiet baton. The tempo eases, the notes stretch into silence. The cerebellum, still listening, still balancing, keeps watch even as you drift away. It ensures that you breathe evenly, that your dreams move with the same grace as your waking life. In your sleep, it continues to hum, a hidden lullaby of perfect rhythm. Let it lead you now, not with thought, but with the gentle cadence of breath. Inhale, the conductor lifts its hand. Exhale, the symphony softens to stillness. The little brain bows, the body follows, and the night becomes music once again. At the very base of the brain, where thought softens into rhythm, lies the brain stem, the quiet bridge between mind and body, heaven and earth. It is small, ancient, and unwavering. Through it, life flows in every breath, every pulse, every moment of stillness. Imagine a narrow passage between two realms. On one side, the sea of awareness, imagination, memory, reason. On the other, the ocean of instinct, heartbeat, breath, survival. The brainstem is that passage. Every signal from the mind travels through it. Every beat, every breath, every gentle motion begins here. It is the silent conductor of existence, keeping time long before thought awakens. The brainstem is made of three regions, the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. Together they resemble roots reaching upward from the spinal cord, each holding a rhythm older than language. The midbrain watches, guiding the eyes toward light and sound. The pons listens, synchronizing breath, balance, and rest. The medulla sustains, maintaining the gentle flow of air and the steady beat of the heart. When a newborn draws its first breath, this network awakens. When you sigh in your sleep, it is the pons adjusting rhythm. When you startle at a sudden sound, the midbrain glows with alertness. Even the blink of your eyes, the reflex to swallow, the cough that clears your throat, all are born in this humble stalk. You do not command these acts. Your body simply remembers how to live. If the cortex is the philosopher and the amygdala, the flame, then the brainstem is the pulse, the original metronome that began its rhythm millions of years ago. The same design exists in every creature that breathes. Thought, language, and art evolved, but the brainstem remained pure and constant, a living fossil of wisdom. It works without rest, adjusting pressure when you stand, slowing your heart when you sleep, widening pupils as light fades. It measures, balances, cambo, and steadies the whole body. Its vigilance is constant, its care unconditional. When you breathe deeply after a long day, the calm that follows comes from here, a soft reminder that peace begins in rhythm. The brainstem speaks in gentle waves, ancient pulses of communication between body and mind. You cannot order your heart to beat, but it listens to the stem. You do not remind your lungs to draw air in the dark of night. The stem remembers for you. It is the silent guardian that hums beneath your awareness, keeping the world within you alive. Inside it lies a luminous thread known as the reticular activating network, a system that brightens consciousness when awake and dims it for rest. When it glows, the senses sharpen. When it quiets, the mind drifts into sleep. Deep breathing, meditation and rest all soothe this network, lowering the inner flame to peaceful warmth. From this same place arises the vagus nerve, the wandering bridge that travels from brain to heart to gut. It carries messages of calm, slowing the pulse, deepening the breath, and quieting the storm of thought. When you exhale slowly, hum softly, or place your hand over your chest, you're speaking to the vagus, and through it, to the brainstem. That is why slow breathing feels like peace. You're reminding your body that it's safe. Meditators often describe a moment when thought falls silent, yet awareness remains. That stillness is born here, where breath and heartbeat merge into one current. Some call it the ocean breath, a rhythm that unites body and spirit, a calm so deep it feels infinite. The brainstem is also the home of instinct, the keeper of ancient memory. Long before reason, it knew how to protect and respond. The startle that draws you from danger, the shiver that runs down your spine in awe or music, all are its signals. It cannot tell beauty from fear, it only knows intensity. That is why both wonder and surprise awaken the same gentle electricity under your skin. Every heartbeat, every breath, every ripple of emotion travels through this sacred core. You could live without sight or sound for a while, but not without rhythm. It is the candle that burns quietly beneath every thought, steady, enduring, and endlessly kind. Now close your eyes, feel it, that soft drum beneath your ribs, that whisper as air moves through your throat. Those are not mere functions, they are the language of life itself. Imagine it, a slender column of golden light at the center of your being, glowing softly with each breath. Around it, the mind hums like a vast cathedral of Muikun. But this is the altar, simple and eternal. Tonight, as you rest, the brainstem will continue its song. It will keep count of your breaths, guide to your heart's rhythm, and hold you safely through sleep. The higher mind will drift into dreams, but this guardian will remain awake, keeping you anchored in peace, so let it work. Let the ancient rhythm carry you into rest. You do not need to command a thing, only to trust the music within. Breathe softly, and feel gratitude for the quiet keeper inside you, the spine of life, humming gently in the dark, the rhythm that began before you were born and still, with every breath, sings you home. The bridge between two worlds. If you could lift the two hemispheres of your brain apart, gently, like pages of a folded book, you would see, running between them, a wide ribbon of white fibers. It shimmers faintly, like moonlight on water. This is the corpus callosum, the bridge between two worlds. Without it, your left brain and right brain would live in silence, strangers inhabiting the same skull. For centuries, the two hemispheres have been symbols of contrast, logic and art, language and image, order and emotion. Yet they are not enemies, only halves of a single design. The corpus callosum is the river of light that connects them, carrying messages at astonishing speed. 200 million fibers cross its span, exchanging data every fraction of a second. The right hand knows what the left is doing because of it. Every time you reach for a cup, both hemispheres coordinate, one calculating position and grip, the other sensing shape and texture. When you speak, one half forms words while the other gives them tone and melody. Even your perception of the world, the fact that it feels whole, depends on this silent bridge. Without it, you would live in duality, a fractured self. Scientists discovered this truth in the mid-20th century, through rare cases of split brain surgery. To treat severe epilepsy, surgeons cut the corpus callosum to prevent seizures from spreading between hemispheres. The results were extraordinary. Patients recovered, could walk and talk, yet subtle peculiarities emerged. A person shown an image to their right eye could name it, but shown to the left eye, they could not. One hand might button a shirt while the other unbuttoned it. It was as if two consciousnesses resided in one body, unable to speak. This bridge, it turns out, does more than pass messages. It weaves unity. It makes you feel like you, a single being rather than two halves negotiating control. When it is intact, thought flows freely between hemispheres, blending logic with intuition, word with feeling. It is why a mathematician can dream of equations, why a poet can measure rhythm, why art and reason meet in balance. Each hemisphere has its character. The left is linear, sequential, analytic. It builds arguments, names objects, measures time. The right is holistic, spatial, musical. It sees patterns, emotions, landscapes. But neither is superior. They are two dancers moving in opposite directions along the same stage. The corpus callosum is the rhythm they share, the beat that keeps them in step. In artists, musicians, and multilinguals, this bridge tends to be thicker. Years of practice seem to fortify its structure, increasing the communication between hemispheres. Creativity, perhaps, is not chaos but connection, the ability to let both sides of the brain speak at once. When a composer hears melody and structure together, when an architect envisions both beauty and function, the corpus callosum hums like a bright current of electricity. If you close your eyes and imagine light moving from left to right behind your forehead, you are tracing that current. Messages leap across in less than 1/100th of a second, aligning perception, emotion, and memory. The mind becomes a dialogue, the left narrating, the right painting. Together they form consciousness, balanced like a scale. At night, when you dream, this bridge becomes a river in flood. During REM sleep, waves of neural activity surge through the corpus callosum, allowing images and emotions to intertwine freely. That is why dreams are illogical yet vivid. The rational left brain sleeps lightly, while the right pours its imagery across the bridge. The result is imagination without censorship, a theatre built on moonlight and memory. Some scientists have described it as a fibre optic cable made of living tissue. In brain scans, it glows as a curved band of white matter, its fibres wrapped in myelin, a fatty sheath that allows signals to travel faster than lightning across millimetres of space. Yet, though physical, it also feels symbolic, a luminous connection between two philosophies of being. The ancients intuited this duality long before neuroscience. In myths and mysticism, the right and left sides often represented sun and moon, male and female, chaos and order. The bridge between them, the silver cord or path of balance, was the place of harmony. The corpus callosum is that myth made flesh. When music plays, this bridge glows. Rhythm engages the left hemisphere, melody stirs the right. As both light up, the corpus callosum sings in the middle, blending structure and feeling. That is why music can make you cry and calculate at once. It crosses the river of reason and emotion effortlessly. In moments of flow, when you're fully absorbed in creation or concentration, scientists find that activity in both hemispheres becomes synchronized. The bridge hums smoothly, no region dominates. You are neither thinking nor feeling, you're simply being. This state some call enlightenment, others call artistry, might just be the brain in perfect unity with itself. The corpus callosum also reflects the individual. In women, studies once suggested it might be slightly larger, allowing greater hemispheric communication. In left-handed people, the bridge often shows subtle asymmetries. But these differences are not hierarchies. They are variations in how each mind weaves its two sides together. Every brain sings the same duet in a different key. When this bridge is damaged or malformed, perception fractures. People may struggle with coordination, language, or emotional interpretation. The hemispheres fall out of rhythm, like instruments drifting from tempo. Rehabilitation helps rebuild partial communication through smaller side roads, because the brain, ever plastic, always seeks reconnection. The urge toward unity seems written into its nature. In modern imaging, when scientists colour the brain's wiring, the corpus callosum appears as a glowing arch. Threads of red, blue, and gold stretching between the hemispheres like a suspension bridge lit at night. Some call it the river of light. When you think, when you feel, when you dream, the current flows back and forth across this river, carrying the whispers of two minds that are really one. So tonight, as you lie still, imagine standing on that bridge. To your left, the landscape of logic, words, lists, numbers glowing like city lights. To your right, the ocean of imagination, waves of colour, sound, and memory. Between them flows the river of thought, reflecting the stars of consciousness. Breathe and feel the two sides of yourself merging. Inhale, the rational world expands. Exhale, the poetic world answers. The current between them hums, calm and bright. The hemispheres are at peace, their dialogue complete. The corpus callosum glows softly in the dark, a ribbon of harmony stretching across your inner sky. It does not speak, it does not command, it simply connects. And through that connection, you remain whole. One mind, two worlds, endlessly bridged by light. The third eye of the night. At the deepest centre of your brain, where left and right hemispheres finally converge, lies a structure no larger than a grain of rice. It is the pineal gland, a pine-cone-shaped jewel bathed in darkness. So small, yet so mysterious that for centuries philosophers called it the seat of the soul. It glimmers faintly, a solitary lamp that measures time itself, whispering to the body when to wake, when to rest, when to dream. Unlike the ceaseless chatter of neurons, the pineal gland speaks only in cycles. It listens to light. When daylight touches your eyes, even through closed lids, information travels along hidden nerves to this gland, telling it that morning has come. In response, it quiets its secretions, allowing wakefulness to bloom across the cortex. When night falls and darkness returns, it stirs again, releasing melatonin, the hormone of dusk. Melatonin is the chemical nightfall of the body. It softens the heart rate, cools the temperature, and invites every cell to slow its work. It is not a command, but a lullaby, a slow reminder that the day has ended. As its levels rise, the body begins to drift toward the edge of sleep, and the mind slides into the dim borderlands of dream. This rhythm, light and dark, wake and sleep, is the oldest music of life. Every creature on Earth, from coral to human, follows it. The pineal gland keeps that rhythm steady, like a conductor marking time in silence. It is the metronome of existence, aligning the body with the turning of the planet itself. And yet, it does more than count hours. Within the gland are microscopic crystals of calcite, capable of responding to electromagnetic fields. Some scientists believe these crystals act like tiny antennas, helping the pineal gland sense environmental rhythms beyond visible light. The subtle changes of gravity, magnetic pull, or perhaps even the emotional atmosphere of the body. Whether or not this is fully understood, the idea feels poetic, a crystal within us that listens to the song of the universe. In ancient cultures, this tiny organ was revered as the third eye, a mystical portal of inner vision. Egyptian carvings show the eye of Horus, whose curves mirror the brain's pineal region almost exactly. Hindu texts speak of the Ajna chakra, the energy center between the eyebrows, which opens insight beyond sight. Though science sees molecules where mystics saw light, both agree that this gland marks a boundary, the threshold between outer vision and inner seeing. When you meditate, close your eyes and let your awareness rest between your brows. You're turning your gaze inward, toward the pineal. That gentle pressure you sometimes feel behind your forehead during deep stillness is not imagination. It is the subtle hum of the brain center adjusting, the gland pulsing with the rhythm of breath. Some describe it as seeing light within darkness, not with eyes, but with the mind itself. The philosopher René Descartes once wrote that the pineal gland was the seat of the soul, the place where the immaterial spirit interacts with the physical body. He could not have known about melatonin or circadian rhythms, yet his intuition touched a truth. This tiny gland mediates between worlds, not spirit and matter, perhaps, but consciousness and the unseen tides that shape it. At night, when you lie under dim light, the pineal begins its secret work. Its cells, known as pinealocytes, convert serotonin, the neurotransmitter of daylight happiness, into melatonin, the messenger of rest. The body feels the shift, the pulse slows, the mind grows fluid, thoughts lose their sharp edges. Soon, images begin to form, fragments of memory and fantasy interlacing. The pineal gland is not dreaming itself, but it opens the gate for dreams to arrive. It is also part of the brain's timekeeping system. Even without external light, the pineal follows an inner schedule, maintaining a roughly 24-hour rhythm. In experiments where people lived for weeks in total darkness, the gland still pulsed, though its timing drifted slightly each day, proof that the clock within us does not depend on the sun, but listens to a deeper internal cosmos. When light pollution, stress, or irregular sleep confuse this rhythm, the consequences ripple through the body. Insomnia, fatigue, and even mood disorders arise when the pineal's delicate cycle is broken. But it can be healed with gentleness, exposure to morning light, evenings spent in calm dimness and consistent rest. The pineal loves routine, not rigidity but harmony. Some researchers have noted that in childhood, the pineal gland is large and active, flooding the brain with melatonin and dreams. As we age, it calcifies, its crystal deposits growing, its secretions fading. Perhaps that is why children dream so vividly and fall asleep so easily, their inner night sky still bright. Yet even in old age, the gland never goes dark completely. Its faint glow remains, the final candle of the mind. For those who meditate deeply, there comes a moment when the line between waking and dreaming blurs, when the mind feels both alert and infinite. Many traditions describe this as the opening of the third eye. From a scientific view, it is simply the pineal gland in balance, melatonin flowing, cortex calm, the world hushed. But the experience feels sacred nonetheless, awareness glowing within rest, consciousness lit by its own starlight. Imagine now, as you breathe in, that you are drawing darkness into your mind, not a frightening dark, but the velvet darkness of space, and as you exhale, that darkness turns to light, shimmering softly behind your eyes. That is your pineal gland glowing, responding to the rhythm of your breath, the quiet pulse of your heart. Inside every brain, there is a night sky. The cortex flashes like constellations, the amygdala burns like fire, the hippocampus like a library of stars. But at the centre, the pineal shines alone, a single, steady light surrounded by silence. It is the lamp of inner night, the keeper of sleep and mystery. So, as you drift now toward dreams, imagine yourself walking under that internal sky. The constellations of thought fade one by one, and only the third eye remains, a pearl in the middle of darkness, softly glowing. It watches over your sleep, keeping rhythm with the turning earth, guiding you through the gentle tides of night. Breathe and let it glow. Breathe and let the day dissolve. You do not need to seek the stars outside tonight, for within you, a single star still shines, quiet and eternal, the third eye of the night, the ancient fire within. Beneath the thalamus, nestled deep in the very heart of the brain, there burns a small cluster of cells no bigger than a fingertip. It is the hypothalamus, and though its size is humble, its power is absolute. It is both clock and compass, furnace and command center, the ancient fire within that keeps the body alive. Every heartbeat, every shiver, every hunger and sigh begins with its whisper. If the pineal gland is the lamp of night, the hypothalamus is the flame of day. It governs the body's inner climate, temperature, thirst, appetite, sleep, desire, stress, and calm. It does not think in words or logic, it speaks in chemistry. Through its secret language of hormones and electrical pulses, it communicates with every organ, balancing countless systems at once. You feel its hand whenever you sweat, blush, or tremble. This fire has been burning since the dawn of animal life. Even the simplest creatures possess a primitive version of it, a few neurons dedicated to survival. The hypothalamus measures your blood's composition every second, the amount of sugar, salt, water, heat. When something drifts out of range, it sends its orders instantly. Drink, eat, sleep, run. It does not ask permission. It is the guardian of equilibrium, the conductor of instincts that never rest. Imagine standing by an ancient hearth, the kind that once glowed at the center of every home. The hypothalamus is that hearth for your body. From this fire, warmth spreads outward, maintaining a precise balance, about 37 degrees Celsius, the fragile temperature of life. If you grow cold, it sparks the muscles to shiver. If you grow hot, it opens sweat glands to cool. You do not notice the orders being given, but every moment they are there, subtle and sure. The hypothalamus also reigns over hunger and thirst. When blood sugar falls, it stirs the appetite. When the stomach fills, it quiets it. When dehydration thickens the blood, it creates thirst. Not a thought, but a craving that burns behind the throat. These drives are older than language. They are the primal dialogue between body and brain, nature reminding itself to endure. At night, the hypothalamus works with the pineal gland to choreograph sleep. It monitors the light fading through your eyelids, senses the cooling of the body, and signals the release of melatonin. Then, as dawn approaches, it reverses the process, raising temperature, waking the heart, commanding the adrenal glands to secrete cortisol, the hormone of alertness. It is your biological sunrise, reborn each morning within your skull, and when emotion surges, when anger flares or fear floods the chest, it is the hypothalamus that turns feeling into physicality. The amygdala sends its alarm, the hypothalamus answers with action. Heart rate spikes, pupils widen, blood vessels tighten. Adrenaline pours into the bloodstream, the ancient flame roars, preparing the body to fight, flee, or protect. Then, once the danger passes, it cools itself, commanding calm. Every wave of tension and relief is the rhythm of this hidden fire. It also directs the endocrine system, that vast network of hormonal messengers. Through the pituitary gland, its loyal emissary, the hypothalamus controls growth, reproduction, metabolism, and stress. From this tiny region flow commands that reach the farthest organs: thyroid, ovaries, testes, adrenal glands. The hypothalamus is both general and governor, sending messages through invisible channels of blood and nerve, yet for all its power, it is astonishingly sensitive. A few degrees too warm, a few drops of water too little, a heartbeat too fast, the hypothalamus notices. It acts not with cruelty, but with precision, nudging the body back toward balance. This is what scientists call homeostasis, the art of staying alive through endless adjustment. Under chronic stress, however, this system begins to strain. The hypothalamus releases too much cortisol, flooding the body with tension. Sleep falters, appetite changes, blood pressure rises. The fire that once warmed begins to scorch. Over time, the body forgets what calm feels like. But like any fire, it can be tended. Deep breathing, stillness, rhythm, rest. These are the acts of rekindling harmony in the hypothalamus. When you fall in love, it glows differently. Hormones shift, oxytocin rises, dopamine pulses, heart and skin respond. The hypothalamus recognizes intimacy not as poetry but as chemistry, and yet it feels just as divine. Warmth spreads through the chest, the pulse syncs with another's. Love, at its core, is a biological duet performed by this ancient organ. It is also the link between mind and flesh. When you imagine biting into a lemon, the hypothalamus makes your mouth water. When you think of a painful memory, it tightens your chest. When you meditate on peace, it slows your breath. Every emotion, every image leaves a trace here, transforming thought into heartbeat, belief into biology. If damaged, the hypothalamus can unravel life's rhythm. Body temperature drifts, hunger disappears, sleep dissolves. The smallest imbalance in its chemistry echoes across the whole organism. It is a reminder that life depends not on grand gestures, but on the perfect balance of the smallest fires. Even its appearance is symbolic. A small cluster of cells glowing with capillaries nestle like a coal beneath the thalamus. On brain scans, it looks like a spark hidden in shadow, flickering constantly as though alive. Some scientists have called it the brain's command room, but perhaps it is better seen as a sacred flame, invisible, essential, eternal. At the edge of sleep, this fire dims gently. The hypothalamus signals the pineal gland. Night has come. Melatonin rises, heart slows, breath deepens. The ancient mechanisms of safety, the same ones that guided our ancestors through dark forests, now guide you toward rest. As you dream, the fire continues to burn, low and steady, maintaining warmth and pulse while your mind drifts far away. Imagine now, deep within your head, a small ember glowing softly in the dark. It never sleeps, never complains. It has kept you alive since before you were born, through fever, hunger, love, and fear. It is the oldest part of you, and the most faithful. Breathe in slowly. Feel warmth spreading through your chest, your arms, your legs. That is the hypothalamus, opening the body's hearth, letting the fire move freely again. With each exhale, the flame steadies, glowing a little calmer, a little clearer. Let it burn quietly tonight. Let it balance, restore, and heal. The world outside may sleep, but inside you the ancient fire keeps watch, the patient guardian of hunger, love, and life itself. When you finally surrender to sleep, it will not rest. It will tend the flame until dawn returns, until the sun rises within you once more. The voice within. Behind your forehead, slightly to the left, lies a small crescent-shaped region of the brain. It is not large, perhaps the size of a walnut, but it is where sound becomes speech and thought becomes language. This is Broca's area, the voice within, the translator between silence and expression. Every sentence you've ever spoken, every word you've ever written, every secret thought whispered only to yourself has passed through this narrow bridge of flesh. When you speak, it activates with electric grace. Tiny bursts of current ripple through neurons as the muscles of your tongue, lips, and throat align in perfect choreography. It is a dance so fluid you forget how complex it is, hundreds of signals in a fraction of a second turning air into meaning. The simple phrase, "I love you," is the result of millions of years of evolution condensed into a breath. Long before writing existed, before music or mathematics, language itself was the first architecture of civilization, and Broca's area was its foundation. Here, the brain learned to shape sound into symbol, to weave air into thought. Every story ever told, from campfire myths to lullabies, from sacred hymns to whispered apologies, begins here, in the quiet spark between neurons. Scientists discovered this region in the 1860s when a French surgeon named Paul Broca studied a man who could understand speech but could not produce it. The man, known as Tan, could utter only that one syllable, though his comprehension remained intact. After his death, Broca examined his brain and found a lesion in this precise area of the left frontal lobe. The discovery changed everything. The voice of thought had a home. Today, we know that Broca's area does far more than shape words. It also structures grammar, predicts rhythm, and constructs internal dialogue. When you plan what to say, when you silently rehearse a reply, when you argue with yourself in your mind, this is the place where that conversation happens. It is the seat of inner speech, the constant narration that defines awareness. Without it, language dissolves into fragments. People with damage to Broca's area can think clearly but struggle to express those thoughts. Their words emerge haltingly, broken, like pebbles skipping across water. The meaning remains, but the bridge between mind and mouth has cracked. They understand everything. The problem is not in comprehension, but in articulation. The voice is trapped behind glass, and yet even in silence this region can hum with life. When you write poetry, sing softly, or talk to yourself in your head, Broca's area glows. It listens to your private voice, that stream of phrases shaping perception itself. We do not just use language, we live inside it. Words are not only a tool for communication, they are the very architecture of thought. The way you think is the way your Broca's area moves. Language does not only describe emotion, it creates it. Say fear, and your amygdala stirs. Say love, and your heartbeat softens. Broca's area sends signals through the brain's emotional circuits, proving that words can make the body feel. This is why affirmations calm anxiety, why prayers and mantras heal, why stories comfort. Language is the nervous system of the soul. The area works closely with its twin, Wernicke's area, in the temporal lobe. Wernicke listens, Broca responds. One interprets meaning, the other gives it voice. They are partners across a neural sea, exchanging lightning-fast messages through a cable of fibers called the arcuate fasciculus. Together they form the human miracle of communication, hearing, understanding, replying, connecting. When you learn a new language, Broca's area stretches and grows. Each unfamiliar sound, each new pattern of grammar, reshapes its pathways. Bilingual people often have more grey matter here. Their voice is literally more complex in structure. Every word learned is another bridge built, another corridor carved through the labyrinth of thought. Music, too, lives partly here. The rhythm of a poem, the pattern of a song lyric, all awaken Broca's area. The same neurons that sequence syllables can also sequence melody. That is why some people with speech loss can still sing. The brain finds another road to expression when one is closed. In music, Broca's area becomes a conductor of pure emotion, bypassing syntax entirely. When you read silently, this region lights up again, whispering the words within your head even though no sound escapes your lips. The inner narrator never stops. It describes what you see, anticipates what you will say next, and rehearses memories for the future. It is the mind's echo, the companion that never leaves. Sometimes the voice within can grow harsh, the critic, the worrier, the looping thought that won't rest. But even then, it serves a purpose. It is the brain's attempt to keep control, to reason through fear. Through meditation or awareness, you can soften this inner voice, turning it from judge to friend. When you learn to speak kindly to yourself, Broca's area literally changes how it fires. The language of self-compassion rewires the voice of consciousness. For centuries, poets have described inspiration as a whisper, a voice that speaks from nowhere. Neuroscience shows that this metaphor is literal. During moments of creativity, Broca's area flickers like a candle, combining rhythm and meaning in unpredictable bursts. When an artist feels words pour out effortlessly, it is because this region has surrendered its strict logic to the flow of intuition. The left hemisphere meets the right, language meets feeling, and art is born. Imagine now, as you listen, the faint hum of that region in your own head, the quiet machinery that lets you name the world. Every word I speak to you travels through your ears, up to Wernicke's area, across the arcuate bridge, and into Broca's area, where your inner voice repeats them silently. That is how language truly exists, not on the screen, not in the air, but inside you, echoing softly, one thought at a time. It is the most intimate miracle of all, that we can translate thought into vibration, vibration into meaning, and meaning back into thought. The sound may fade, but the voice within remains, shaping the mind's landscape with every phrase. So tonight, as your breath slows and your consciousness begins to float, listen not to my words, but to the quieter one behind them, your own. It is older than speech, gentler than thought. It murmurs between waking and sleep, between awareness and dream. That voice has been with you since childhood, guiding, questioning, comforting. Let it speak softly now. Let it tell you what you already know. That silence itself is just another form of language. And as you drift into that silence, Broca's area will quiet too, the voice within folding into rest, ready to wake again with the first words of morning. The window of light. At the very back of your head, tucked into the folds of the occipital lobe, lies a region that never sleeps while your eyes are open. It is the visual cortex, a shimmering landscape where light becomes image, and image becomes meaning, the window of light through which you see the world and yourself. It is small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, yet everything you have ever seen and every colour, face, horizon, dream and memory of sight has passed through it. When photons touch your retina, they do not carry colour or shape. They are only vibrations, invisible codes of energy. The eyes translate them into electrical signals, and the visual cortex assembles them into vision. A miracle of perception performed in less than 1/10 of a second. If you could peer inside this region as you look around, you would see a silent storm of light. Neurons flash like stars as they map the world. Edges, movement, distance, texture. One cluster detects vertical lines, another responds to faces, another to colour. Every second, billions of neurons fire in perfect coordination, painting the landscape behind your eyes. And yet what you see is not the world itself. It is a reconstruction. The brain does not receive the world directly. It builds one from light. The colours you admire, the depth you perceive, even the motion of your own hand are all fabrications of this cortical orchestra. Vision, in truth, is an act of imagination. The visual cortex is divided into several regions, known as V1 to V5, each handling a different aspect of sight. The primary visual cortex, V1, receives raw data, lines, contrast, brightness. V2 and V3 combine them into shapes and motion. V4 colours the world, filling outlines with hue, while V5, the motion area, transforms still images into the fluid ballet of movement. Together they create the illusion of a seamless world, an unbroken movie projected onto the screen of the mind. Close your eyes for a moment. The images fade, but the cortex does not go dark. It begins to remember. You can still picture a loved one's face, a tree in the rain, the shifting blue of the sea. That is because the visual cortex stores fragments of light, reactivating them as the imagination. Even the blind, especially those who once could see, report visual dreams, their occipital lobes glowing with remembered brightness. The brain does not forget the art of seeing, it transforms it into thought. When you dream, this region awakens again. During REM sleep, the eyes dart beneath closed lids, following the movements of images within. The visual cortex becomes almost as active as it is in daylight, but now it no longer mirrors the world outside. It projects one of its own, mountains that never existed, faces that never were, skies of impossible colour, all born from the same neurons that handle ordinary sight. Dreaming is not blindness, it is internal vision. In ancient philosophy, the act of seeing was sacred. Light symbolised truth, darkness, ignorance. Yet modern neuroscience reveals that both light and dark live within us. We are not passive recipients of illumination, we are creators of it. The visual cortex is the painter of reality, its brushstrokes constant, invisible, precise. Think of what happens when you look at someone you love. Your pupils widen, your retina floods with light, and deep within your skull the occipital cortex dances. Each line of their face is measured, each colour of their skin rendered in microscopic detail. Then higher areas of the brain, the temporal and limbic regions, attach meaning to the image. This is warmth, this is connection, this is safe. What you see is not just the outline of a person, this is emotion made visible. The same region can be deceived. Optical illusions exploit the shortcuts your cortex uses to save time. A shadow appears darker than it is, a still image seems to move, a face hides within a cloud. These are not failures, but proofs of the brain's efficiency. Its need to predict rather than merely record. To survive, perception must move faster than truth. The world you see is always a half-second old, yet feels immediate. When damage strikes this region, sight fractures. A person may still see light and motion, but cannot recognize objects, a condition called visual agnosia. Or they may see nothing at all, though their eyes remain intact. Sometimes, in a phenomenon known as blind sight, individuals with destroyed visual cortices can still navigate obstacles unconsciously. Some fragment of perception lingers below awareness, proof that vision is not just in the eyes, but in the entire body of the brain. Artists, perhaps unknowingly, communicate directly with this hidden painter. The bold contrast of Van Gogh, the soft shadows of Rembrandt, the perfect geometry of Da Vinci, all speak the native language of the occipital lobe. When you gaze at a painting and feel its beauty before you can explain it, it is because your visual cortex recognizes the pattern, the rhythm, the harmony that your words cannot yet name. Colour, too, is its poetry. There is no colour in the external world, only wavelengths of light. It is the cortex that interprets them as blue, crimson, gold. Even your perception of white is not purity but combination, all wavelengths blended into one by your inner painter. The sunset's orange is not in the sky, it is in you, and light, that silent traveller from the sun, is both messenger and muse. When it touches your retina, it begins a journey through optic nerves, through the thalamus, and finally to this cortical plane. There, it blooms into perception, into recognition, into awe. Every sunrise you have ever seen, every candle flicker in the dark, every glimpse of another's eyes, all have left their echoes here, etched in living tissue. Now imagine yourself standing inside that region, an endless cathedral of light. Beams cross like stained glass, shifting in rhythm with your breath. Each neuron is a tiny lantern, flickering as the images pass. The world outside dissolves, and yet the world within continues to shine. You are no longer looking through the eyes, you are looking from the soul. As you rest tonight, the visual cortex will dim, allowing dreams to take its place. But the light within will not go out. It will transform from sight to image, from image to memory, from memory to silence. Let the eyes close now, let the window of light turn inward. Even in darkness, the inner world remains bright, because you are not merely one who sees, but the one through whom seeing exists. Sleep then in the gentle afterglow of your own mind. The window has closed, but behind it the stars are still shining, the invisible listener. Deep within the folds of your temporal lobes, near the curve of each ear, there lies a region that never stops listening. Even in silence, it hums with anticipation, waiting for the next vibration to arrive. This is the auditory cortex, the invisible listener, a realm where air becomes sound and sound becomes meaning. Every whisper, every song, every heartbeat you've ever heard has echoed through this hidden chamber of the mind. Sound is motion. It is the trembling of air molecules, invisible waves that ripple outward from a source. When these waves touch your eardrum, they set tiny bones in motion, the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. The smallest bones in the body, yet powerful enough to shake open the gates of perception. The cochlea, a spiral shell deep in your inner ear, translates these vibrations into electrical signals and sends them racing along the auditory nerve. They travel upward through the brainstem's labyrinth until they reach this cortical hall of resonance, where the world becomes audible. Here, within the auditory cortex, the raw data of sound is sculpted into melody and meaning. Neurons are tuned to specific frequencies, like strings on an instrument. Some respond only to high pitches, others to deep bass tones. When someone speaks, thousands of these neurons fire in harmony, decoding syllables, accent, and rhythm. Language, music, laughter, even the rustle of leaves, all are interpreted here, woven into the fabric of understanding. The auditory cortex is symmetrical, mirrored on both sides of the brain, yet each half listens differently. The left hemisphere focuses on detail, grammar, timing, articulation. The right listens for emotion, tone, and music. Together they form a duet, one analytic, one poetic. That is why speech can move you to tears and a melody can make you remember. It is not the ear that feels emotion, but the brain's listener. Every sound you hear arrives slightly later than it occurs, just a few milliseconds delayed by travel through air and nerve. Yet the auditory cortex corrects this automatically. It synchronizes what you hear with what you see so that the world feels instant. This illusion of simultaneity is one of the cortex's great gifts. It keeps time on your behalf, weaving fragments into the smooth continuity of now. When you close your eyes and imagine music, the auditory cortex activates as if the sound were real. It does not distinguish imagination from perception. This is why you can hear your favorite song without it playing, or recall the voice of someone you love long after they've gone. The cortex keeps their resonance alive, an echo that time cannot erase. Even the deaf can hear through it. In those born without hearing, the auditory cortex rewires itself, responding to touch and sight instead. When they feel vibration or see rhythm in light, this same area glows with recognition. The brain, ever adaptable, refuses silence. It always finds a way to listen. When sound enters this chamber, it is first separated into what and where, what kind of sound it is, and where it came from. One stream identifies the pattern, while the other maps its location in space. This dual processing gives depth to the world, the direction of a voice, the distance of thunder, the nearness of your own breath. The auditory cortex is not passive, it predicts. Before a sound even finishes, it guesses what comes next. The next word, the next note, the next heartbeat. This anticipation creates the pleasure of rhythm. When music follows our expectations, we feel satisfaction. When it surprises us, we feel delight. The listener within loves both certainty and astonishment. It also remembers voices. When you hear someone familiar call your name, your auditory cortex reacts more strongly than to any other sound. The brain recognizes not just frequency or volume, but identity. A mother can pick out her baby's cry from hundreds. Lovers can hear each other's laughter across a crowded room. These recognitions are not mechanical, they are emotional signatures etched into neural circuits. Silence too has a sound here. When external noise fades, the auditory cortex continues to hum softly. It listens inward, to the rhythm of blood, the rush of breath, the quiet beating of the heart. This is why true silence can feel loud, as though the body itself is speaking. You are never not listening. Even in stillness, the listener remains awake. In sleep, it does not shut down completely. The auditory cortex stays half alert, scanning the dark for familiar patterns. A baby's cry, a sudden knock, a whisper of danger. The world of dreams may close your eyes, but never your ears. Some part of you always listens for the pulse of safety. It also listens to emotion. The same sound, depending on its tone, can mean comfort or threat. A single note can suggest joy or grief depending on context. The auditory cortex sends these signals to the amygdala, where feeling ignites. That is why a song can lift your mood or break your heart. It is the meeting of rhythm and emotion within the brain circuitry. When this region is damaged, the world fractures into noise. Words lose clarity, music becomes formless. In a rare condition called amusia, people cannot recognize melodies, even though they hear perfectly. For them, music is reduced to random tone, the emotion stripped away. Yet, in others, especially musicians, this region grows denser, more refined, able to detect microtonal shifts so small that the average ear cannot notice. The auditory cortex, like the body, strengthens with use. Some scientists describe it as a living instrument, self-tuning, ever-changing. The more you listen with attention, the more exquisite it becomes. A trained musician's cortex responds to the faintest nuance of sound. A poet's to the subtleties of voice. Listening is not passive, it is an art. Now, in this moment, listen. Not to the world outside, but to the sound of your own breathing, the air entering, the soft exhale leaving. The brain registers every vibration, every interval between sounds. You are both musician and audience, both source and listener. Imagine your auditory cortex as a vast concert hall. The arches and pillars are neurons. The air hums with electric resonance. Every sound of your life has performed here. Footsteps, rain, laughter, your own heartbeat. Tonight the hall is dimly lit, empty of noise but not empty of presence. The listener still waits, calm and eternal. Let that listener rest. Let the music of your breath be enough. No symphony is greater than this quiet rhythm, no voice more honest than the pulse within. The invisible listener fades into silence, but the silence itself is not void. It is the final note, the echo of everything you have ever heard, still reverberating softly in the chambers of your mind. The machinery of habit. Deep beneath the glittering surface of consciousness, below the curved roads of the cortex and the fiery pulse of emotion, there lies a hidden engine. It hums without your awareness, turning endlessly, guiding every repeated act of your life, tying your shoes, writing your name, unlocking your phone, breathing in rhythm to a familiar song. This is the basal ganglia, the machinery of habit, a network of silent gears that transforms repetition into mastery. The basal ganglia are not a single structure, but a constellation. The caudate nucleus, the putamen, and the globus pallidus, shaped like crescent moons and shells of light beneath the brain's surface. They connect to nearly every region of the mind, sensory, motor, emotional, binding them into loops of memory and movement. When you practice something long enough for it to feel effortless, it is here that the transformation happens. At first, the cortex struggles to control every step. Learning a new skill feels clumsy and conscious. You must think about every detail, the placement of a foot, the sequence of a word, the rhythm of a chord. But with repetition, the basal ganglia begin to take over. They record patterns in the form of timing and reward. What feels right? What earns success? Gradually the cortex relaxes and the hidden machinery runs the show. Habit is the brain's way of freeing the mind to dream while the body performs. This system saves energy. The cortex, vast and intricate, consumes enormous power with each decision. The basal ganglia, by contrast, are thrifty. Once a sequence is learned, it runs automatically, requiring almost no conscious effort. That is why you can drive home while thinking of something else, or tie your shoelaces while half asleep. The machinery hums on, precise and loyal, even when your mind wanders elsewhere. It is also the center of reward. Inside this network flows the neurotransmitter dopamine, the chemical of motivation. Each time an action brings pleasure or success, dopamine surges, marking the behavior as worth repeating. The basal ganglia remember that surge like a spark. This is how habits, good or bad, are forged. The same circuitry that lets you master a skill can also trap you in addiction. The machinery does not distinguish virtue from vice, it only follows the rhythm of reward. In disorders such as Parkinson's disease, the flow of dopamine dwindles. Movements slow, gestures tremble, actions lose their fluidity. The gears of the basal ganglia grind without lubrication. What once felt automatic becomes laborious, as though the mind has forgotten how to move the body it inhabits. Yet in the early stages of learning or therapy, the brain can sometimes reroute signals, forging alternate paths, proof that even the oldest machinery can be repaired. When balanced, the basal ganglia create grace without effort. Dancers rely on it, athletes trust it, musicians depend on it. Every fluent gesture is a conversation between habit and intention, between automation and awareness. The cortex sets the goal: play this note, make this move. And the basal ganglia perform it with mechanical perfection. Practice, in essence, is how you train your inner machinery to sing, but it governs more than motion. It shapes thought patterns as well. The same circuits that automate muscle memory can also automate emotional reactions and beliefs. Worry, for instance, can become habitual, a loop reinforced by the same reward of attention and relief. Anger can become reflex, sadness a default state. To change these inner habits, the brain must interrupt the loop, rewire reward, and practice calm until calm itself becomes automatic. The machinery does not sleep. Even in dreams, it replays sequences, footsteps, phrases, rhythms, polishing them in the background. That is why a skill sometimes improves overnight, as though the mind kept training while you rested. The basal ganglia are the night workers of the brain, refining performance in silence. To meditate is to touch this machinery gently, to slow its spin. As you repeat the act of stillness, the habit of stillness forms. Breath by breath, calm becomes effortless. Over time, mindfulness itself is encoded as a reflex. You no longer chase peace, you become it through practice. The same mechanism that once powered compulsion now sustains serenity. Think of it as a subterranean clockwork, hidden beneath the city of thought. Every gear turns another, every spark of dopamine drives the rhythm forward. Most of the time, you never notice it, yet without it the world would collapse into chaos. Habit is structure. Structure is freedom. A pianist cannot improvise until scales are second nature. A writer cannot find poetry until grammar becomes reflex. Mastery is the art of teaching the machinery to serve creation. When this system falters, life becomes fractured. Too much dopamine, and behavior becomes restless, a mind driven by reward without reason. Too little, and motion slows to stillness. Balance is everything. That balance is maintained through constant negotiation between cortex and basal ganglia, between the dreamer and the engineer. The philosopher William James once wrote, "We are mere bundles of habits." Neuroscience quietly agrees. The person you become is shaped less by grand intentions than by the small, repeated loops of thought and action your basal ganglia sustain. It is here that identity is rehearsed until it feels natural. Change your habits, and the machinery rewrites who you are. There is beauty in its indifference. The basal ganglia do not judge. They do not care if you practice kindness or cruelty, patience or anger. They will learn whatever you feed them faithfully. And they will continue that rhythm until you teach them something new. This is both the danger and the hope of human nature, that transformation is always possible because habit is always plastic. Now, imagine standing inside this machinery. Around you, gears of light turn in slow, silent circles. Each click represents an action you've learned. The way you walk, the way you smile, the way you breathe when you're calm. Some gears spin smoothly, others grind, worn by repetition. But at the center, a single axis glows, the power of attention. Wherever you focus, the gears adjust. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, the machinery will keep turning, not in noise but in quiet precision. It will regulate your posture, your breathing, your dreams. The gears that once spun for survival now hum for restoration. Let them move without control. Let habit take over the simple acts of life. The inhale, the exhale, the rhythm of the heart. Beneath the conscious mind, the machinery of habit continues its faithful work. And above it, the dreaming self watches, grateful for its devotion. Rest now, knowing that your inner clockwork keeps perfect time. The ancient, unbroken rhythm that began long before thought, and will keep turning until morning light. The mirror of the body and soul. Hidden deep within the folds of your brain like a secret chamber beneath a cathedral, lies a small curved island of grey matter. It is called the insula, from the Latin word for island. You cannot touch it, and no mirror can show it to you. Yet it feels everything. Every heartbeat, every flutter of anxiety, every wave of warmth or nausea, every whisper of intuition arises here. The insula is where the body speaks, and the mind listens. It is the mirror of the body and soul. If the cortex deals with the external world, with light, language, and logic, the insula is devoted to the internal one. It is the brain's window into the body's silent symphony. The rhythm of the heart, the temperature of the skin, the churning of the gut. Every moment, signals rise from your organs through a vast network of nerves, carrying messages of comfort, hunger, safety, or pain. The insula receives them all and translates them into feelings. When your stomach tightens from stress, or your chest warms from love, it is the insula that allows you to notice. It turns physiology into experience. Without it, you might still live, but you would no longer feel alive. This ability, called interoception, is what gives you awareness of your inner state. You do not simply have a body, you sense it. The insula monitors every fluctuation in heartbeat and breath, compares them to expectation, and alerts consciousness when something changes. A skipped beat becomes worry, a deep breath becomes calm. The insula is the translator between neurons and emotion, between the hidden machinery of life and the theatre of awareness. When you feel disgust, the insula lights up like a warning flare. When you feel empathy for another's pain, it does the same. This overlap is astonishing. The same area that helps you recognize your own suffering is also responsible for recognizing suffering in others. To feel with someone is not abstract compassion. It is the insula simulating their pain within you. That is why empathy feels physical. It literally is. In the 1990s, scientists discovered that people with damage to this region could no longer feel disgust, neither moral nor physical. They could describe something as dirty or wrong, but without emotion. They might eat spoiled food or fail to react to a cruel act. The moral compass was intact, but its magnetism was gone. Emotion, it seems, begins in the body, and the insula is its compass needle. The insula also mediates the sense of self. It tells you that the body you inhabit is yours. Experiments using virtual reality have shown that when the insula is disrupted, people can feel detached from their own bodies, as though floating outside themselves. The boundary between me and not me blurs. The sense of being a unified self dissolves into something vast, weightless, cosmic. Some mystics, during deep meditation, describe exactly this, not as disorientation, but as liberation. In moments of mindfulness, the insula becomes strikingly active. It pulses gently with each heartbeat, aligning awareness with the body's rhythm. You begin to sense the subtlest shifts, the coolness of air on skin, the space between breaths, the warmth behind the eyelids. To meditate is, in part, to strengthen this region, to listen more closely to the song of the body until it becomes music, not noise. And yet, when overstimulated, the same system can feed anxiety. The insula, detecting every tremor and flutter, can mistake ordinary sensations for danger. A racing heart feels like threat. A breath held too long feels like suffocation. The mind reacts to its own signals, looping fear upon fear. That is why calming the breath calms the insula. It tells the body, you're safe, and the island grows still again. The insula also plays a role in taste, craving, and addiction. Nicotine, sugar, and even love activate it intensely. The more something feels emotionally charged, the brighter the insula burns. It records not only the physical pleasure, but also the memory of that pleasure, the craving that follows absence. In addiction recovery, this region slowly quiets as the body relearns peace without stimulation. The island cools and clarity returns. Within its folds, the insula contains a map of the body, a cartography of flesh. Each region corresponds to a specific internal sensation: heart, gut, lungs, throat, skin. When you shiver, a tiny section flares. When you laugh, another hums. It is as if your consciousness is built upon this map, your sense of being someone emerging from countless sensations woven together. You are in a literal way, the sum of what your insula feels. Artists and poets often speak of intuition, that inexplicable knowing that bypasses thought. Neuroscience suggests that intuition is bodily memory interpreted by the insula. The gut feeling that something is right or wrong is not mysticism but biology. The body detecting patterns too subtle for the conscious mind to articulate. The insula whispers its verdict as a sensation, a tightening, a warmth, a tremor. When you trust your intuition, you are listening to your body's ancient language. There is a quiet beauty in that. For all the complexity of human thought, wisdom often begins below speech, in pulse, breath, and heartbeat. The insula is the sanctuary where those signals are received, translated, and sent upward as knowing. When damaged or underdeveloped, empathy wanes, compassion dulls. Yet with care, through meditation, mindfulness, music, or human connection, it can grow richer. Studies show that long-term meditators have larger, more active insulas. Their sensitivity to both emotion and peace is heightened. They feel the world more vividly, not as noise, but as resonance. Imagine for a moment stepping inside your insula. It is dark but warm, the air vibrating with the pulse of your blood. Around you, faint glows ripple, each one a sensation somewhere in your body. The heart beats like a drum. The lungs expand like waves. The skin hums with electricity. You're surrounded by your own aliveness. The island is not isolated after all. It is the meeting point of everything that makes you human. If you could look closer, you would see that it mirrors the world itself. Every emotion, every gesture of empathy, every instinct for kindness. When you feel another's grief and your chest aches, the same neurons that once detected your own pain light up again. The body's compassion is not metaphorical, it is literal. As you lie still now, your insula is quietly listening to your breath, your pulse, the weight of your body against the bed. It reports safety to the rest of the brain. The heartbeat slows, the breath deepens, the island glows faintly with calm. Let it guide you inward. Let it remind you that peace is not found by leaving the body but by returning to it. Every breath, every subtle tremor is proof that you are here, not just thinking, but feeling. The mirror reflects perfectly now. Body and soul, heartbeat and thought, joined in one quiet rhythm. Rest there, on that island of awareness, where the ocean of sensation meets the sky of mind. The insula watches over you, and the whole body sighs in answer. The reflected mind. There is a moment, quiet, instantaneous, when you see someone smile and your own lips lift before you realize it, or when you witness pain and feel a twinge deep in your chest. That flicker of imitation, that echo of another's emotion, is not learned politeness. It is the work of something ancient and invisible within you. The mirror neurons, the reflected mind that allows us to feel what others feel, to see not just with the eyes, but with empathy. Discovered by accident in the early 1990s, mirror neurons changed how science understands connection. Researchers in Parma, Italy, were recording the brains of monkeys when they noticed something strange. Certain motor neurons fired not only when the monkeys performed an action, but also when they merely watched another do it. The same neurons that moved the hand also moved the imagination. Observation and experience shared a single code. When you see someone grasp a cup, your motor cortex silently rehearses the act. When you hear laughter, your brain's emotional circuits light up as if you were laughing too. When you watch a dancer leap, your muscles tighten slightly, mirroring the motion in miniature. These neural reflections form the biological foundation of empathy. The reason emotions spread like ripples across a crowd, why movies make you cry, and why kindness can be contagious. In the human brain, mirror neurons live in networks that span the premotor cortex, the parietal lobe, and the insula. They bind perception and action, self and other, thought and motion. Through them, the brain creates a shared language beyond words, a communication of movement and feeling that existed long before speech. Long before stories were told, there were gestures, glances, sighs. The mirror system was our first empathy. This ability to simulate another's experience gave rise to civilization itself. It allowed early humans to cooperate, to teach, to learn by imitation. It is how children master complex skills without instruction. They simply watch, and the brain mirrors. Every human gesture, the wave, the handshake, the nod, carries within it the ancient echo of this system. Through mirroring, we synchronize. We become social, bonded, human. And yet, this mechanism is not merely functional, it is emotional. When you see someone in pain, your mirror neurons activate the same regions that respond to your own pain. The empathy you feel is not metaphorical, it is biological resonance. This shared circuitry blurs the line between you and me. The suffering of another leaves a trace within your own body. Compassion is not an idea, it is a reflex. But this mirror system has its paradoxes. It can bring connection or exhaustion, joy or sorrow. Doctors, therapists, or caregivers often experience empathic fatigue because their mirror neurons fire too vividly, absorbing the pain of others without pause. Artists, actors, and musicians, on the other hand, channel this same mechanism into creation, feeling deeply to reflect humanity back to itself. Every actor's craft, every painter's sorrowful face, every love song is a product of this reflection loop. When you cry in a cinema, your brain cannot tell the difference between fiction and life. The image of grief on the screen activates the same pattern as real grief in your limbic system. The eyes see, the mirror neurons echo, and emotion becomes shared experience. This is why art can heal, because it invites the mind to feel safely, to mirror without consequence. In people on the autism spectrum, research suggests that mirror neuron activity may function differently. The ability to instinctively interpret facial expressions or gestures can be reduced, not because of lack of feeling, but because the mirror system fires less automatically. Empathy still exists, but it must be built consciously rather than reflexively. This discovery reminds us that compassion wears many forms, some intuitive, some learned, all valid, all human. The mirror system also explains the subtle choreography of communication. Conversation is not just sound, it is mimicry. We mirror posture, tone, and even breathing patterns. When two people are deeply engaged, their neurons literally synchronize, a phenomenon known as neural entrainment. Their brainwaves fall into rhythm, creating a resonance of shared attention. That harmony is what we call connection. Inside the skull, this looks like waves of light meeting each other. Each brain becomes a mirror, reflecting and amplifying the other's signal until both shimmer with the same pattern. Perhaps this is what poets mean when they speak of two souls in tune. It is not just metaphor, it is measurable electricity. But the mirror system does more than echo the outer world. It also teaches us who we are. By reflecting others, the brain learns to recognize itself. Watching emotions on another's face helps infants construct their own: joy, fear, anger, calm. Through imitation, identity is born. The mirrored mind builds the self from the faces of others. It also fuels creativity. When an actor immerses in a role, their mirror neurons fire as if the performance were reality. The brain temporarily adopts another identity, merging observation and action. This capacity for simulation, for becoming someone else, is not only artistic but deeply spiritual. It is the same gift that allows forgiveness, empathy, and love. To mirror another's soul is to momentarily dissolve the borders of your own. And yet, mirroring requires boundaries. Without them, the flood of shared emotion would overwhelm. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's regulator, acts like a gatekeeper, ensuring that reflection does not become possession. It allows empathy without drowning, compassion without chaos. You feel another's pain but know it is not yours. That distinction is the foundation of mercy. In meditation, something remarkable happens. Mirror activity softens. The mind ceases to react to every external stimulus. The self grows still, observing without imitation. Yet when compassion meditation begins, when one imagines kindness spreading to others, the mirror network awakens again, this time in harmony with calm. The reflection remains, but it is no longer reactive. It shines with gentleness instead of urgency. Now imagine, if you could step inside this system, what it would look like. A hall of mirrors stretching infinitely in all directions. Every spark of emotion reflected, multiplied, transformed. One face smiles, 1,000 reflections smile back. One tear falls, and the whole chamber glows with empathy. That is what happens each time a human heart recognizes another, an invisible cathedral of neurons lighting together in rhythm. When the world feels divided, the mirror neurons remind us that separation is an illusion. You carry within you the neurological blueprint for unity, the instinct to understand, to resonate, to heal. Every act of kindness reignites that ancient circuitry, reminding the body of what it was built for. Not isolation, but reflection. Tonight, as you listen in stillness, your mirror neurons are active even now. They follow the cadence of this voice, matching its rhythm, sharing its calm. Your breath and mine align for a moment across distance, across time. That is the final miracle of the reflected mind, that through words, tone, and silence, our neurons can recognize each other, and for an instant we become one continuous echo. Let that echo fade into quiet now. Let the mirrored lights dim. You are both listener and reflection, giver and receiver, the still water in which the world sees itself, the mirror and the mind that shines within it, the voice of stillness. There is a quiet that lives between thoughts. You have felt it before, in the pause after a conversation, in the hush before sleep, in the moment your mind wanders to nowhere in particular. In those intervals, when attention softens and the outer world fades, another system awakens deep inside your brain. The default mode network, often called the DMN, the voice of stillness. Unlike the regions that activate when you focus, calculate or move, the DMN comes alive when you rest. It lights up when the body is still, when the eyes drift from the world, when the mind turns inward. It is the brain's background hum, a constellation of regions that connect the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the angular gyrus, among others. Together they form an inner theatre where daydreams unfold, memories resurface, and identity takes shape. Scientists discovered this network by accident. In the early 2000s, brain scans taken during rest periods, the moments when participants were asked to do nothing, showed surprising activity. The brain, it turned out, is never idle. Even in silence, it weaves narratives, replays the past, imagines the future. The mind's default setting is not emptiness, but reflection. When you close your eyes and drift into thought, remembering a childhood smell, imagining a friend's voice, wondering what tomorrow might bring, it is the DMN that carries you there. It links fragments of memory, emotion, and imagination into coherent stories. It gives continuity to consciousness, ensuring that the you of today feels connected to the you of yesterday. Without it, experience would be a collection of moments, unanchored and unremembered. This network is also the seat of autobiographical memory, the ability to look back on your own life as narrative. It is what allows you to say, "This happened to me." It connects emotion to recollection, so that memories are not mere facts but living sensations. The scent of rain, the sound of your grandmother's voice, the warmth of a long-forgotten afternoon. These echoes are carried by the DMN folded into your sense of self. Yet it does more than recall, it imagines. The same system that remembers the past also constructs possible futures. When you plan, dream or fantasize, the DMN builds worlds from fragments of memory. This ability to picture what is not yet real is what allowed our ancestors to design tools, invent stories, and create civilization itself. The DMN is the architect of possibility, but it is also the home of rumination, the looping of worries and regrets. When the DMN grows too active, it traps the mind in endless rehearsal of pain. Thoughts spiral, replaying old fears like broken records. In depression and anxiety, this network can dominate, drowning out the present moment with the ghosts of what was or what might be. The same gift of imagination becomes a prison of overthinking. Meditation, however, can soften its grip. Studies show that in experienced meditators, the DMN quiets significantly. The constant internal narration fades. For a while, the self itself, that ceaseless storyteller, dissolves into stillness. Awareness remains, but without commentary. The voice of the mind bows before silence. In that silence, peace arises, not because the world has changed, but because the narrator has finally rested. Still, We need the DMN. Without it, we would lose not only memory but meaning. The stories it tells, though sometimes heavy, are what give shape to identity. The key is balance, to listen without being consumed, to let thought flow without clinging. When balanced, the DMN becomes a gentle tide, carrying reflection without drowning in it. When you walk alone, letting your mind wander, the DMN hums softly. It connects your steps to your dreams, weaving them into quiet introspection. It is active during creativity too. When artists stare into space, appearing lost, they're actually exploring vast landscapes within. The DMN links disparate ideas, allowing insight to emerge from stillness. A flash of inspiration. A sudden solution. Both are gifts from this invisible network. This same system connects deeply with the sense of self. It is where the I resides. The voice that says, I am thinking, I am feeling. When overactive, it can create a burden of self-consciousness, that inner critic always whispering, judging, remembering. But when harmonized, it provides coherence, grounding you gently in identity without weight. The self, then, is not an object but a process, a story told by the DMN, rewritten each day. Imagine for a moment stepping inside this network. It is not a machine but a night sky, vast, slow, luminous. Each star represents a memory, a thought, a dream. They flicker in no particular order, yet together they form constellations, the pattern of who you are. Some stars are bright with joy, others dim with sorrow. All of them belong to the same sky. That sky is your DMN, the backdrop of consciousness, eternal yet ever-changing. As you rest, this network hums gently, knitting the day's experiences into story. It files emotions, rewinds moments, finds meaning in the ordinary. Even dreams are its echo, the DMN reshaping waking life into symbols and allegories. It is your brain's storyteller, writing the next chapter while you sleep, and yet it also knows how to let go. During moments of deep presence, when you lose yourself in music, nature or love, the DMN fades and the boundary between self and world dissolves. Time slows, you feel whole. Neuroscientists call this transient hypofrontality, but poets call it union. It is what happens when the voice of stillness and the noise of thought meet and become one tone. If the earlier regions of the brain are engines, wires and lights, the default mode network is the quiet hum between them, the sound of being alive when nothing else demands attention. It is consciousness at rest, awareness of awareness. Tonight as you lie still, the DMN will awaken gently. It will replay the day, stitching scenes together into dreamlike coherence. It will decide what to remember and what to release. The stories will unfold softly, then fade into the dark. You do not have to control it. You do not have to stop it. Let the voice of stillness speak in its own rhythm. Let the wandering thoughts drift like clouds, shaping and reshaping without end. Eventually the clouds thin, the stars emerge, faint, familiar, infinite. The storyteller grows quiet, the story dissolves, and beneath it all, there remains only stillness, the soft hum of the default mode network, singing the mind to sleep, a lullaby written by the self and performed by silence itself, the bridges of light. Inside your brain, every thought, every feeling, every flicker of awareness depends on a connection smaller than dust, the synapse. There are more than 100 trillion of them, forming an invisible city of light within you. Each synapse is a bridge between neurons, a tiny gap where electricity becomes chemistry, and chemistry becomes memory. Without these bridges, the mind would be a silence without shape. No thought, no motion, no self. If neurons are the stars, synapses are the space between them, narrow channels where energy crosses from one to another. They are not fused together. There is always a distance, a fraction of a micrometer. And yet, across that gap, entire worlds travel. Each thought is a spark leaping from one neuron to the next, carried by molecules called neurotransmitters. When one neuron fires, it releases these messengers into the synaptic cleft. They drift across like glowing pollen, landing on the receptors of the next cell. Some excite, urging the neighbour to fire too. Others inhibit, whispering "be still." Together they compose the electrical symphony of your inner world. It all happens within 1,000th of a second, so fast that it feels seamless. You never feel the gap, only the current of consciousness flowing through it. And yet, that gap is where everything happens. Learning, memory, emotion, all begin with change at the synapse. When you experience something new, the pattern of connections between neurons shifts. Some synapses grow stronger, their signals amplified, others fade, unused and forgotten. This process, called synaptic plasticity, is how experience writes itself into the brain. To learn is not to store information like a computer, it is to reshape the bridges of light within. Imagine your mind as a vast night sky filled with stars, each one a neuron. Every time you think, feel, or remember, certain constellations light up. Pathways connecting one spark to another. Over time, the stars that fire together begin to form highways of light. Neurons that fire together, wire together. It is one of the simplest, most beautiful truths in neuroscience. As children, our brains are full of potential connections, more than we will ever use. The synapses are abundant, chaotic, exuberant. Then, during adolescence, the brain begins to prune, trimming unused connections so that the remaining ones can strengthen. Like a sculptor chiseling away stone, the brain carves itself into form. What remains is a reflection of how we live, what we love, and what we repeat. The person you become is literally shaped by the pathways you keep. Emotions, too, are chemical patterns crossing synapses. When dopamine surges, the bridges glow with reward and motivation. When serotonin flows, calmness spreads. When cortisol rises, the bridges tense with stress, carrying warning signals through the body. Even love, that most mysterious state, is a choreography of neurotransmitters leaping between billions of gaps, binding us in a chemistry older than language. But these same bridges can also falter. In Alzheimer's disease, synapses weaken and die long before neurons themselves do. Memories vanish, not because the brain stars go dark, but because their bridges collapse. In depression, communication between certain regions slows. In addiction, it becomes hijacked, flooded with artificial surges of dopamine. Every mental state is a pattern of bridges in flux, fragile, mutable, alive. Sleep is when these bridges are cleaned and restored. During deep rest, the brain clears away excess chemical debris, pruning weak synapses and refreshing the strong. It is a nightly maintenance ritual, the city of light sweeping its streets. That is why learning consolidates during sleep, and why deprivation dulls memory. Dreams, in this view, may be the brain's way of testing the new roads it has built, a rehearsal before dawn. The beauty of synapses lies in their impermanence. They are built to change, to adapt to each moment's experience. Nothing in the brain is static. Even now, as you read, thousands of synapses are strengthening, while others fade into quiet. The mind you have at this moment is not the same as the one you had yesterday. Identity itself is a flickering constellation, never fixed, always becoming. When you meditate, patterns in this network shift dramatically. The frantic traffic between some regions slows, allowing others, like those linked to calm and compassion, to strengthen. Over time, new pathways form, linking attention to peace instead of fear. Synapses are not loyal to pain, they are loyal to practice. The more often you return to calm, the more those bridges solidify. Think of memory. It is not a single place, but a network of strengthened synapses, each one whispering to the next. We have done this before. Every smell that brings back childhood, every melody that makes you weep, every familiar face you recognize after years, all are encoded in the strength of connections that survived time. When people say memory fades, what they mean is that some bridges have gone dark, and yet others can be rekindled. New experiences build new paths. Even in old age, the brain retains the power to form fresh synapses, a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity. The bridges of light can always rebuild themselves. Healing, learning, forgiveness. These are biological miracles as much as emotional ones. To imagine the scale of it is overwhelming. If each synapse were a single grain of sand, your brain would contain enough to fill a cathedral. If each one flashed like a star, your skull would glow brighter than the Milky Way. This is what happens every second of your life. a cosmic storm contained within a handful of matter. Now picture it. Within the darkness of your mind, trillions of tiny bridges stretch and shimmer. Signals leap like fireflies in a summer field, each one a thought, a hope, a piece of memory crossing the abyss. The air hums with electricity, but there is no chaos, only rhythm, as precise as heartbeat. You are watching the architecture of consciousness at work, and yet, for all its complexity, the synapse is humble. It is a fraction of space, a pause between impulses. It teaches us something profound, that connection requires distance. Between neuron and neuron, there is always a gap. Between you and the world, a breath. The miracle lies not in erasing the space, but in bridging it, again and again, with light. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine those bridges slowing their pulse. The traffic of thought grows sparse. The waves gentle, neurotransmitters settle, neurons whisper their last messages for the day. The city dims, but it does not go dark. It waits, poised for the next dawn of awareness. Let the bridges rest. Let the stars stay linked in silence. For every connection in your mind is a spark of being, a small miracle of light across the void, and when morning comes, the first thought will leap once more across that sacred gap, and consciousness, this fragile, shimmering network of bridges, will awaken again. The silent caretakers. For centuries, when scientists gazed at the brain through early microscopes, they saw the neurons first, those sparkling messengers of electricity, leaping and firing like stars in motion. Around them, they noticed something else, a soft web-like substance that filled the spaces between. It did not seem to carry signals or light up on command. It simply was. They called it glia, from the Greek word for glue, assuming it existed only to hold the real actors together. But time has humbled that assumption. The glial cells, once dismissed as background, are now known as the brain's silent caretakers, the quiet architects of its balance and endurance. They are not the ones who shout, they are the ones who sustain the song. There are more of them than neurons, perhaps as many as 100 billion, forming an invisible web that nourishes, protects, repairs, and even communicates. Without them, the bright symphony of the mind would fade into static. There are several kinds of glia, each with a unique role in this secret orchestra. The astrocytes, star-shaped and radiant under a microscope, cradle neurons like guardians. They regulate the chemical environment, feeding the neurons with glucose, soaking up excess neurotransmitters, and ensuring that each signal happens cleanly. When neurons fire, astrocytes listen in silence, sensing the change in energy, adjusting blood flow to bring oxygen where it is needed most. They are the caretakers of equilibrium, the nurses of consciousness. Then there are the oligodendrocytes, the engineers of speed. They wrap the long axons of neurons with myelin, a fatty insulation that allows signals to travel up to 100 times faster. Every quick thought, every reflex, every spark of insight depends on this invisible wrapping. Without it, impulses crawl, and the elegant harmony of timing collapses. In diseases like multiple sclerosis, when myelin breaks down, thought itself slows, the music of the brain stuttering fragmented like a record with cracks. The third kind, microglia, are the guardians, the immune sentinels of the nervous system. They patrol the brain constantly, sensing danger, cleaning debris, and defending against infection. But they are not just warriors, they are gardeners too. During development, microglia prune unnecessary synapses, trimming the exuberant growth of the young brain into order. Even in adulthood, they continue this pruning, removing weak or unused connections so that thought remains sharp. They are in essence the curators of clarity. Together these cells form a silent civilization within your skull. They do not carry the light of thought, but they make thought possible. They are the breath behind the flame. If neurons are the stars of the show, the glia are the stage, the lighting, the air, the patient hands that reset the scene after every act. For years it was believed that glia did not communicate, that they were passive support. But recent discoveries reveal a subtler language. Astrocytes, for example, send slow waves of calcium signals across their networks, coordinating activity in ways scientists are only beginning to understand. They may even influence how memories form by regulating the strength of synaptic transmission. Some researchers now speak of a tripartite synapse, a connection not between two cells but three: presynaptic neuron, postsynaptic neuron, and astrocyte. The caretaker, it seems, has always been part of the conversation. This hidden role explains something profound: why the brain can recover, however imperfectly, from damage. When neurons die, it is glial cells that rush to clean and rebuild. They form scaffolding around wounds, seal leaks, and guide new connections. Sometimes they even attempt limited regeneration, a reminder that healing begins not in fire, but in quiet work. Yet even caretakers can falter. When glial cells become overactive, they can trigger inflammation, strangling the neurons they once protected. Chronic stress, sleep loss, and toxic environments can all disrupt their harmony. In such moments, the brain's garden turns against itself. Diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's may begin here, in the quiet breakdown of support. The lesson is simple: even silence must be cared for. There is poetry in their humility. Glia never generate the flash of thought, but they steady the pulse that allows it. They embody what every system, biological or human, needs to endure: those who work unseen. The teachers, the healers, the listeners, the ones who repair what others break. Civilization itself reflects the same balance, the brilliance of a few sustained by the quiet strength of many. When you study, meditate, or sleep, the glia remain at work. They shuttle nutrients, sweep away the metabolic dust left by your thoughts, and maintain the fragile balance of ions and signals that defines consciousness. It is through them that your brain's rhythm remains stable hour after hour, night after night. They are the steady hum beneath the melody. Even in dreams, their work continues. As you drift through sleep, astrocytes shrink slightly, widening the channels between neurons. Through those spaces flows the glymphatic system, a river of cerebrospinal fluid that washes away waste. It is a process discovered only recently, and yet it may be the most important housekeeping act of all. The glia guide that flow like ancient river keepers, ensuring that the brain awakens renewed. Their existence reminds us of a truth often forgotten: brilliance needs rest, and thought requires care. The neuron may represent individuality, but the glia represent community. Each supports countless others, working not in isolation, but in synchrony. The mind's beauty is not just in its sparks, but in its structure, a testament to cooperation deeper than consciousness itself. Imagine, if you could, seeing them up close. You would not find noise or frenzy, but a slow, glowing ballet. Astrocytes extending delicate arms, touching blood vessels and neurons alike. Microglia gliding like shadowy sentinels inspecting the terrain. Oligodendrocytes weaving fine white threads of myelin, wrapping them in spirals of quiet precision. It is less an army than a symphony, one whose rhythm is time itself. Now picture this symphony inside you, playing as you rest. The neurons, exhausted from a day of thinking, dim their lights. The glia step forward, sweeping the stage, repairing the props, tuning the strings. They do not seek applause. Their satisfaction is the silence that follows, the hum of balance restored. Perhaps that is why the brain resembles a living universe. It is not just the firing of stars, but the vast spaces between them, the gravity, the unseen forces that hold everything together. The glial cells are that gravity, invisible but essential. So, as you breathe slowly now, imagine them at work, the silent caretakers of your mind, moving through you like gentle wind through a forest. They are tending to the roots of thought, mending the fragile bridges, sweeping away the dust of the day. Rest comes easiest when you know the unseen is watching over you. The neurons sleep, the glia keep vigil. Their song is steady, patient, without end, a lullaby older than consciousness, the quiet hum beneath the stars of your mind. The river that washes the mind. Every night as the world outside dims and your eyelids fall, a hidden river awakens within you. It does not flow through valleys or mountains, but through the soft channels of your brain. An invisible tide known as the glymphatic system, the river that washes the mind. For centuries, scientists wondered how the brain, sealed inside bone, cleansed itself. Every other organ had a drainage system, but the brain seemed to have none. It was not until 2012 that researchers discovered the truth. The brain has its own midnight current, a network of glial pathways that carries away the waste of thought. It begins when you sleep. As consciousness fades, neurons slow their firing and the brain's energy shifts from processing to renewal. The cells shrink slightly, by nearly 60%, widening the tiny spaces between them. Through these gaps, cerebrospinal fluid begins to flow, drawn from the ventricles at the brain's core. It sweeps through the tissue, washing away toxins, proteins and debris, including beta-amyloid, the sticky molecule that, when left to accumulate, contributes to Alzheimer's disease. It is as if the night itself opens the floodgates, allowing the mind to bathe in its own cool, restoring current. This process is guided by the silent hands of the astrocytes, the same star-shaped glial cells that nurture neurons by day. Embedded in their membranes are AQ4 channels, microscopic tunnels that regulate the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. These channels are the river's banks shaping the current, ensuring that every fold of the cortex is reached. When they function well, the brain awakens refreshed, its chemistry balanced, its pathways clear. When they falter through aging, inflammation, or chronic sleep loss, the waters stagnate and the mind begins to dim. Sleep, then, is not laziness. It is housekeeping. It is the body's most ancient ritual of renewal. To rest is to allow this river to flow freely, to let the debris of waking life dissolve back into silence. Every thought, every surge of emotion leaves behind a trace, fragments of molecules, metabolic exhaust. During wakefulness, the brain is too busy to clean itself. Its highways are jammed with traffic. Only when you surrender to sleep does the night crew arrive, sweeping the roads, patching the bridges, restoring order for the next day's journey. You may have felt this difference intuitively. After a good night's rest, the world feels lighter, colours sharper, emotions steadier. After sleepless nights, the mind feels swollen, clouded, slow. That heaviness is real, the weight of waste that has not been carried away. To sleep is to be washed from within, to let thought return to its source. This internal river does not flow evenly. It pulses in rhythm with the heartbeat and the breath, rising and falling like tide water. Each slow inhalation draws fluid inward, each exhalation releases it again. During deep sleep, when the body's systems synchronize, the glymphatic flow peaks. It is a choreography of life itself, heart, lungs, brain and glia, moving together like instruments in the same nocturne. When scientists watched this process under the microscope, they described it as breathtaking, waves of blue light coursing through brain tissue like bioluminescent tides. It is the closest thing the body has to a cleansing sea. In that sense, every night you sleep, you return to the ocean from which life first emerged, not in body but in rhythm. This river also explains why naps, even short ones, can restore clarity. A few minutes of rest allows the glymphatic system to stir, briefly flushing the channels, clearing just enough debris to refresh attention. It is why meditation, with its slow breathing and calm stillness, can mimic the same effect, the quiet body signaling the glia to begin their subtle sweep. But modern life has not been kind to this river. Artificial light confuses the brain's circadian clock, delaying the natural rise of melatonin that opens the floodgates of sleep. Stress, caffeine, and digital overstimulation tighten the channels, keeping the waters shallow. Over years, this deprivation takes a toll. Memory dulls, concentration falters, emotional balance wavers. The river cannot be forced, it must be invited. To invite it is simple. Darkness, rhythm, stillness. Let the lights dim early, let the body cool, breathe slowly, deeply, until the heartbeat and the breath move as one. The brain recognizes these signals. They are older than language. Soon the neurons begin to quiet, and the first currents stir in the depths of the cortex. You drift, and the river begins its work. During dreams, the glymphatic tide and the default mode network, the mind's storyteller, often intertwine. The waste of emotion becomes image. The debris of thought becomes narrative. The river cleans by transforming. What cannot be used by day becomes metaphor by night. When you awaken with a strange dream, you are remembering not just fantasy, but the act of mental renewal itself, the mind painting its own cleansing. As the night deepens, the rhythm slows further. The neurons flicker less. The glial cells open their channels wider. The river runs quietly, carrying away the ashes of memory, the fatigue of attention, the residue of thought. By dawn, the tide has receded, leaving behind a landscape fresh and ready. You awaken as the brain's shoreline, smooth and new again. Aging weakens this system. The AQP4 channels lose alignment. The flow diminishes. The river grows sluggish and debris begins to accumulate. But even in age, it responds to rhythm, to steady breath, to gentle exercise, to sufficient rest. Movement by day helps the tide by night. A body that breathes deeply and moves often keeps its inner waters alive. If you could see it, this glymphatic river, it would look like light flowing through stone, fluid weaving through a labyrinth of silver threads. Every cell would shimmer with motion. Every pulse of blood would ripple through the current. It is not just cleaning, it is communion, the body, the brain, and the breath remembering they are one system, one rhythm. So as you lie here, close your eyes. Imagine that river awakening within you. With each exhale, the waters move, gently washing through the corridors of your mind. They carry away the noise, the worry, the fragments of the day. What remains is clarity, the quiet shine of a brain renewed. Let the river flow where it needs. Let the glial stars guide it. Let the heartbeat push its tide. You do not need to control any of it. You only need to rest. For this is what the brain was designed to do, to shine brightly by day and by night, to be washed clean by its own light. The river will work while you dream, steady, patient, eternal, a tide of stars moving through the darkness, carrying yesterday away, so that when you wake, your mind is a morning ocean again. And now, as the last waves fade, your brain drifts in perfect stillness, washed, quiet, renewed. The neurons rest. The glial stars keep their gentle watch. The inner tide slows to silence. Sleep is not the absence of thought, but the return to balance. You're safe within your own universe, a sea of light beneath closed eyes. Breathe, and let the night carry you home.